Can I get the slide up, please? Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Mel Blake, and I am a mentor on Team 3132, the Thunder Down Under from Sydney, Australia. Next slide. So just a bit about myself, first of all. I'm an engineering and maths teacher. I've been with Team 3132 since 2009 when I was a founding member of the team. And I was a student on that team for 3 years before becoming a mentor. I did a Bachelor of Engineering, Mechanical Engineering, a couple of years ago, and after that became a teacher, worked in education. My primary roles with my team are on the mechanical, electrical, and outreach sides. And outside of that, I'm heavily involved in volunteering with First Australia. So at the moment, I'm the head judge for FLL and FTC in Australia. And a couple of years ago, last year, I was given the Volunteer of the Year award at the 2019 Southern Cross Regional, mostly for my involvement in making way too many bumpers over the past 4 years. That's a long story. I'll try and explain later. Next slide, please. Thanks. Just a bit about my team. So Team 3132, we're from Sydney. We were founded back in 2009 ahead of the 2010 season. And for the first 3 years, we were actually the only team in our country and really in the region around us as well, which was a tricky situation to be in. We tried very hard for 3 years to get other teams going. And in the off-season of 2012, we were able to get an off-season event going called the Dual Down Under. And 2 years after that, we managed to get a regional. So we're a community team. We take students from all around the Sydney region. So that's the city that we're from. We have between 50 and 70 students at any point in time. And for our role, basically, in getting FRC going in Australia, we were fortunate to receive the Championship Chairman's Award back in 2017 at the Houston Regional. If you've ever been to the Houston Regional, or further back, if you went to the St. Louis events, you might know us as the koala people, because when we come to events, we usually give out the little tiny cuddly koalas. So if you ever got one of those, you probably got it from us. Could I have the next slide up, please? Thanks. So just a bit about some of our programs that we've got going at the moment and over the past couple of years. So the Dual Down Under, you can see that in the middle, is one that we're really proud of, because that was the first FRC event that we had going in Australia. Like I said, we started this in 2012, and it was really important to us to get an off-season event going before we had a regional, so that we could get the numbers up of FRC teams in Australia to the point where we could actually start that regional back in 2015. Once we had that, or just to get that regional going, actually, we founded a program called Robots Around the World, and that's the logo in the top left-hand corner. And that's a program where we go out, or we try to send out mentors or bring mentors to us from regional and remote communities, particularly in Australia, to try and found FRC teams in rural areas. And so a lot of the teams in Australia are actually not from the big cities. They're from more remote locations, and they travel to us to attend our regionals. So the Robots in the Outback program is a pretty cool thing that we've got going down here. You may have heard of the Compass Alliance. 1678 is a part of that. We founded the Compass Alliance after we had won the Championship Chairman's Award, and that's a big organization of teams from around the world that provide resources and support for FRC primarily, but for other programs as well. And then something that we've got going at the moment is the 24 Hours of STEM. So that's another conference, a little bit like this one, but we try and run it for a solid 24 hours and pull in teams from all around the world, presentations on all sorts of topics. So we had one of those earlier this year, and we've got one planned for, I think, in December as well. Next slide, please. Thanks. And just to wrap up, I thought I'd just address the Australia thing. We are from Australia. Yes, that does mean we have kangaroos. Now, this is not from our backyard. This was from one of our outback trips that we did a couple of years ago. So if you ever come to Australia and you travel around, you will see kangaroos just roaming around the outback of Australia, around the countryside. And so we had a bit of an incident where a baby kangaroo, a little Joey there, decided to come and say hi and meet one of our Lego robots that we were showing off to the kids in that community. So that's pretty funny. Okay, that's all from me.
Hi, I'm Alexis, and I am with Team 1902 Exploding Bacon, and we won the World Championship Chairman's Award in Houston in 2019. Next slide. I am currently a junior in high school, so I'm still a student on the team. I'm going into my 4th year with Exploding Bacon. And on the team right now, I'm the secretary, the First Like a Girl lead, robot project manager, and the sponsor relations lead. And I was going to be the team player as well this past season, so kind of got canceled. And during build season, I worked with the mechanical and electrical sub teams, and 2018 to 2019, I was the summer camp lead as well. Next slide. Okay, so First Like a Girl is a media campaign we started to encourage more women and girls to get involved in the STEM field, because not a lot of them are involved in that kind of stuff. And recently we had a little panel thing we did where we had women who were involved in the STEM field come and join us on an Instagram live to share about their career path and how they achieved their goals, and then we answered any questions that came up along the way. It was a really awesome event. Next slide. So we do a summer camp every summer. It is one of our major outreaches, and we teach kids about science through really fun and engaging experiments, which are really cool. And then we also slowly get them involved in first by teaching them about Lego Mindstorms and stuff, which is really fun. And we do a little competition at the end where they get to show off their building and their programming and everything they learned, and their parents come and watch, and it's really awesome. Next slide. So we do a lot of different outreaches. I really enjoy outreaches. I've logged over 200 hours of outreach since I joined Exploding Bacon, which is really awesome. We have so many different outreaches we participate in to share about FIRST and show what our team can do, and it's really cool. Next slide. So the Big Bacon Theory of Image and Marketing is a workshop that I have helped present several times at the World Championship and at various regional events. This workshop we use to help other teams work on their imaging or branding, whatever they're looking for when they come to that workshop. And it's a really cool workshop that we help people. And I'm really excited to be here on this panel. So thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I've been tasked with the hard job of going third and following up the two of them and their amazing teams. So my name is Mossam, and I'm from Team 1241 Theory 6, which is a team from Mississauga, Ontario in Canada. You guys might know us for a couple of the things that we've done in our outreach, such as our library program, which I'll talk about in a second. But our team was started in 2003, so this is our 17th season in FIRST. We're one of the first teams in our area of Mississauga, and we've been lucky enough to see FIRST really grow and flounder into the giant program that it is in our region now. So that's a little bit about us, and next slide. So a little bit more about me. I'm actually in my senior year of university. I'm a biology and chemistry double major with a minor in neuroscience, and I go to the University of Waterloo and Laurier. It's my 8th FRC season, my 4th one as a mentor, and I have been the outreach lead on our team since 2017, so since my first year as a mentor, and I've gotten the chance to work on quite a few of our award submissions over the years, especially with some amazing students who have really taught me how important outreach is and how great it is to give back to the community year after year. So I've also gone to work on our Girls in STEM Olympics since the year it started in 2017, and our New to Country program, which I'll get into in just a second. So next slide, please. So I'm going to highlight 3 of the programs that we've really worked on revitalizing and growing over the last couple of years. And the first one of those is our Beyond Borders program. So this is something really cool that we do and we're going to be running in the next couple months. And it's online webinars that we're doing with FLL teams across India to help them get started for their FLL season, which will be a little bit delayed. So we'll be running a mock season with them and then giving virtual training for their mentors and students. And I included a screenshot from one of our other camps just as a demonstration of some of the stuff that we've been able to do during COVID. So it has been very testing times, but I think our team has worked together to overcome the adversity that COVID has brought. And a good example of that will be our Beyond Borders program. Next slide, please. So moving on, our new to country. So a lot of, if you've ever heard of Theory 6, you've probably heard of our new to country program. And this is where we get to work with a lot of immigrants and newcomer youth in our area. And we've gone able to do that through our summer camps, our winter camps, other programs that we've run over the years. We've started 2 FLO junior teams with these newcomers, and we've brought over 100 people to our district championship back in 2017 to show them what FIRST is about and get them excited about STEM and robotics, and let them know that there is an opportunity for newcomers to get involved with robotics and STEM, even if they are still learning a new language and getting used to the culture in their new home. So that's been something really cool. And as you guys can see in the pictures, we've gone to do some really interesting things, and they've gone to learn a lot from coming out to these experiences firsthand. Next slide, please. And lastly, I'm going to talk about our Girls in STEM Olympics, which is actually happening right now. So it's happening today and tomorrow. It's also online, so you guys can watch on YouTube. And it's a 1 to 2 day event that we run annually in the fall for girls aged 14 to 18 who are interested in STEM. These can be people who have experience doing STEM stuff or just want to know what being in a STEM field might be like. So we do team and individual challenges, which allow networking and communication and also confidence building, because you're not just doing these tasks alone. We have an innovation fair and networking opportunities between both the participants and industry professionals, universities, women in engineering clubs at certain universities all across Canada, and some of our sponsors. And then we also have a guest speaker panel, guest speakers, and a panel that comes in to answer questions and talk about some of their experiences. So if you guys want to know more about that, you can follow GIST Olympics on Instagram or watch them on YouTube after you're done watching this. And that's it for me, I think.
There's no more slides, right? That's the end of it? I'm pretty sure, yeah. Okay, so now we're going to take the time. Anybody watching the stream at home, feel free to leave any questions in the chat, and we will be answering them along with our wonderful speakers. Thank you once again to our speakers for presenting today. Thank you to everyone who's watching. Please feel free to ask any questions right now. I'll be taking a look at the chat. Okay, nice. We got one. So they asked, how do you determine the degree that you do outreach during COVID? And Melinda, would you like to answer this for us?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I should probably just say that our situation here in Australia is a little bit different to you guys over there. We basically have the situation now under control and are resuming in-person events. But earlier on, when we were also in lockdown, we were looking at things that we could do during COVID with all the restrictions around interaction. And so we tried to identify things that we could be doing that didn't require people to come together, which was what led us to do the first 24 Hours of STEM event, which is pretty similar to what we're doing here. So basically just a big online conference where we bring different speakers in to give talks about different aspects of FRC and STEM as well, just generally. So that was one big thing that we did earlier. But in terms of making that call, I think you need to be really cautious with the type of outreach that you're doing. So, excuse me. Obviously, it's difficult to get different groups of people together now. So you really just need to be looking at options that are basically just virtual to avoid that risk. So we've done some virtual RoboCamps as well, working on packages with Amazon to get outreach, or basically RoboCamps, holiday RoboCamps programs to different groups of students out there. That don't require them to come together as well. So that's the direction that we've gone in, certainly. But we're fortunate to be in a position now where we're looking ahead to next year, and we think we can actually start resuming in-person events. So we're very fortunate in that respect.
Thank you for that great answer, Melinda. We have another question, and they say, how do you organize large events that involve teams, industry professionals, sponsors, etc.? And we're going to ask Possum if you'd like to answer that for us. Awesome, sorry. I don't know why I said it wrong. So bad.
You're good. Sorry, it was to like how do you organize big events?
Yes. How do you organize large events that involve teams, industry professionals, sponsors?
So a lot of our events are large events between our FLL tournaments or our Girls in STEM Olympics and things like that. And the first thing that we do is definitely start a planning process super early. And that's something that we've learned over the course of running our events. So maybe the first year you'll have to learn and grow. So keeping an open mind, but definitely, yeah, start the planning process early. And if you think that anything is too much or too extra, you're overthinking it. You're probably not. It's better to think of every possible thing that can and cannot go right or wrong, and plan for all of it in case something does. And then in the end, you'll be happy if things go better than they could have the other way around. But I definitely think breaking it up into different sub teams and subcommittees is a good way to start. So start early, break it up into different groups so that you have a lot of help. Trying to do anything in a small group is probably not ideal unless that's the restriction that you've been given, in which case manage the size of your event and try to grow it year after year, and opposed to doing a massive event right at once, so that you get a quality experience to the participants or to the people coming out to experience it. So yeah, I think that's what I have to say. And then in COVID times, definitely just keep an open mind and know that, everyone's trying out new things. So if your event is going virtual and it's always been in person, you just have to take everything with a grain of salt. And there might be technical issues, or there might be, you might have to learn how to use a new software, and you might need to give training ahead of time. So, just trying to take everything one day at a time, and trying to think of, once again, everything that could possibly, one, all the what experience you want to give the participants, and then number two, what's the best way to go about it, and how would you want to experience it as a participant as well. So I think if that answers the question, that's, I think, the best way to go about it in a general aspect.
Thank you very much for that answer, Massam. Now we actually have a lot more questions now. I wasn't paying attention. That's great. So another question from Matthew Rowe. Hopefully I'm saying that right. What are some of the steps that a young team could take to expand its outreach efforts? So we're going to ask Alexis if you could answer this question for us.
Yeah, so just starting out, it's really good to start making connections. Like when you go to events, you want to talk to as many different teams as you can, or just reach out through social media. We've done that with a lot of teams, or message in if we're doing an event, like how we got reached out to participate in this event, and share what we know about outreach and stuff. That's a great way through social medias and stuff and competitions. Just doing whatever you can to really get your name out there is a really great way to start, by making connections so they know who you are, and then starting programs like how we send Spark kits out. We started a program called First Alliances to help connect teams, and First Like a Girl to inspire women. Figuring out what you can do to help your community and what they need, and that'll also help get your name out there when you start figuring out what you can do to help the people around you.
Thank you for that excellent answer, Alexis. I'm more wise already. All right, so what else is there? Oh, Taitaro asks, how do you get your team members excited about outreach? Now, I'm not going to keep the same pattern over and over. We're going to spice things up. So, Maslum, would you like to answer that for us?
Yeah, I'm super excited that I got this question because how do you get your kids excited about outreach? Oh gosh, the number one thing I think that you can do is, get your mentors bought in if your team does have a lot of mentors. And if not, then the ones that you do have, excitement starts top down. So parents, mentors, if they're excited about giving back to the community, the students will absorb that energy and want to do it too. At least that's what we've seen on our team. Another really big thing is ask them what they want to do and what problems they see in the community, or what things that they wish they had growing up, or what things they want to experience in the future, because that's the best way. If they're not passionate about it, they're not going to want to plan it or implement it or volunteer for it. But the second that you're doing things that the students care about, or things that they're that personally affect them, or things that they can actually feel like they're changing systemically, that's going to get them excited. And we've seen that time and time again through our library program, where a lot of our students coming into our team, even 5, 6, 7. It started in 2011, so almost a decade in now. We still have students who are saying oh, the only reason I'm a mentor in FRC, or the only reason I'm still in FRC, is because I came out to the library program, and now I want to come to 1241 and mentor so that I can improve it for the future. So I definitely think, find out what they're passionate about or what speaks to them, and focus on how how you as mentors can support that, and also how you can help get other teammates excited about it too, who might be just new to the first community altogether. So that'd be my answer.
That sounds very important. The ability to motivate your team members, especially during this kind of time for some people, being able to bring a community together and have the motivation to do that, that sounds impeccable. A great kind of thing for an FRC team. Let's see, what else is there? Someone says, what are suggested subcommittees as a follow-up? I don't know if did anyone know how to answer this question? I don't. Whoever wants to answer this, it's fine. I'm not sure what the question is, but
I think he was asking in relation to the how to plan an event question, or he or she.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's follow up. Yeah. Okay. Would you like to answer that? Anyone? Or we could just
I can go first to answer that.
Okay, got it.
I think like having a who depends on what kind of event you're trying to run. You're probably going to want someone who's doing your volunteer coordinating, someone who's the event coordinator, who will be overseeing kind of everyone else's tasks. You want to have a logistics team who will be looking at like what platforms you want to use, how you're going to be communicating it, a marketing team to put out promo materials, make sure you have a good attendance, or if you need registration, then getting numbers ahead of time, putting out media for it. You're probably, if you're doing like an event where it's workshops or games, you're going to want a workshop or games coordinator that works on the development of the activities that you're going to be doing. Probably like a finance or budgeting team to talk about, if you need sponsors, or like how much money are you going to need? Do you need to fundraise? Do you need sponsors for the event? Things like that. And then also if you have like prizes or awards or things, how to allocate funds for that. So those are some of the ones that I can think of that most events would probably need. But I don't know if Mel or Alexis has any other categories.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good list to me. You definitely want to try and, particularly if it's a physical event, to try and break it down, not just in terms on the day as well as planning in advance. So when we plan events, big events like that, we want to make sure that we've got like a bump in and a bump out crew as well, because we're very fortunate to run most of our events from Macquarie University. So we got to make sure that we're considerate of the places that we're hosting our events in. So we're very careful about planning how we move all of our equipment in at the start of the event and then out again. So we have people who will run the bump in and the bump out processes as well, which I think is pretty important. And then in addition to that, I think that the communication channel for the day is also really important as well, particularly for larger events. I'm primarily involved in running FLL and FTC events. And so we use Slack for all of our communications, but it's super important if you're in a large venue to have that situation under control as well. I've spent far too many events on a scooter riding up and down across campus at Macquarie University. So having a platform like that can be really important as well.
Anything to add, Alexis, to that? Or
They covered that pretty well, so I don't got anything to add.
Got it. Thank you, all three of you, for that very great answer to their question. Another one we have in the chat by Hisha Javirdi. If I say these names wrong, that's my bad. What are things you do to engage with / retain alumni and mentors on the team, especially when it comes to supporting outreach efforts? Alexis, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of our alumni and like graduates do end up coming back to mentor our team because we always want to keep them involved, but we also want to help them like transition over from the student to mentor world. So they come back and our more experienced mentors help teach them how to interact with the students since they're now mentors. And so they will like start out with like little like roles helping out here and there, and whatever like committee they used to work on, whether it was like robot or business or fundraising, whatever like committee they helped work on, they will have those mentors then teach the newer students or the students who want to learn more about that committee or sub-team, and so pass on their knowledge to help bring up the next students into that role. And so that's like one of the major ways we transition is just like the passing of knowledge to teach the students so that it's still like a student-run team, so that the students are still involved getting to do a lot of stuff and learn new things all the time.
That cultivation of knowledge makes it so nice for different people in a team to be passing through generations after generations and still learning so much about different aspects of STEM, business, and outreach. Thank you so much, Alexis. We have we have a question from Kathy. How do you make sure your outreach efforts are efficient and achieve their intended purpose? And I believe I owe this to Melinda. So would you like to answer this one?
For sure. How do we make sure they intended purpose? Look, first of all, I would say is don't be afraid of doing outreach efforts that you're not 100% convinced they're going to pan out. We've certainly started or attempted things, and then 2 years down the line or a year down the line thought, oh, that actually wasn't such a great idea, and then we've just let it sort of fade away. But other ones do pan out. So I would say, first of all, just don't be afraid to try things out. And some of them won't work, and some of them will be huge successes. Some of our best successes were things that we thought weren't going to work at all, like our robots in the Outback program. I think it's just important when you go into a new effort that you really think through all of the resources that you're going to need to make that a success, in particular in terms of the manpower, less so the funding. So making sure that you actually have the expertise to make an outreach effort work in the way that you want it to work. And if you don't, to not be afraid to reach out to other teams and other individuals in your area or in the wider community to see if you can get the support, because maybe you have a really, really cool idea, but you're not yourself in a position to make it work, like right now, right at this time in this place. So try and build up a really strong network. And that's something that we've tried to do. We have a really good network here in Australia of teams that we can reach out to if we've thought of something that we think needs to be done or can be done in terms of outreach, but we don't have the bandwidth or the manpower right at this moment to do it. So don't be afraid to reach out to other people and bring them in on your outreach programs. Yeah. Does anyone else want to add to this?
I assume not. All right. Oh,
I think you did great.
I think it was great too. Indeed. Okay, so that was a fantastic question. Now let's go to Kate asks, how do you balance and coordinate activities for younger elementary level and older junior high school kids at events? I probably scuffed that question, but I could say it again if you need it. And Alexis, would you like to answer that question for us?
Yeah, sure. But can you ask it one more time, just so I can
Yes,
get all this stuff?
I'll read it more. I will read it more clearly. How do you balance and coordinate activities for younger elementary level and older junior high school students at events?
Okay, so we do host a FLL Junior event at a library near where our build space is. And so we do that and engage with kids, and so we get to see what they do, and then we also tell them about the summer camp we do, because that is around the elementary age. It's a younger summer camp, and so that's a big way we teach them about STEM and science, and so then all that stuff. And then at outreaches we'll see more of older kids sometime at certain outreaches, and we'll ask them what they're interested in doing, because not everybody's going to be interested in the mechanical, electrical, or programming side of the team. Some kids are more interested in the business side and the outreach. And so we'll be yeah, if this is what you do, that does fall under STEM and what we do. And we tell them how they could learn more about what they're interested in, through first, because it's more than robots. There's more stuff to do. I've learned so much about outreach and business and all that kind of stuff. And we just show them all the possibilities they can get through first. That's aside from the robot, because everybody sees it and it's just a robot gonna be a mechanical engineer. But there is so much more stuff you can learn through this program.
Thank you. Wow. I want to join FRC now if I wasn't already in it. All right. That was fantastic. Let's see. We have another question, and it's, how do you discover or generate new outreach opportunities? Let's go, Mel. Would you like to answer that?
For sure. I think it's really important when you're looking around for outreach opportunities is to look, first of all, at the community around you. And I appreciate that we're perhaps in a slightly different situation because we were the first team in our country. But you really want to look around in the people in the communities around you and see if there's an opportunity there, first of all. So could you go and start an FLL team in a local school or an FTC team, something like that? Is there a community of older people that you can draw on or get involved with? So building up a really strong network in your local community, first of all, is really important. And that's super helpful down the line for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, if you've got a really strong network of FLL and FTC teams, then those are all potential future members so that your team is super sustainable going forwards. And secondly, having a strong community around you means that your bigger outreach efforts it can actually be really well supported. Like I was saying earlier, if you've got this network, then there are people that you can reach out to, more contacts that you have to support bigger outreach efforts going forwards. If you're moving away from looking at your local community, I would say, you don't necessarily want to make this huge leap from just small local programs into some great international outreach effort. Get in touch with the bigger teams that you know and see if there's something that you can jump on board with that they're already running that you can take part in, because taking part in outreach programs run by more established teams is a really good way to see how those can be run really effectively. And then later on, when you start your own, again, you've got a good network to draw on. Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the major thing. If you're then looking for international outreach, as I know a number of different teams are, international outreach is a very difficult, tricky thing to do, as I'm sure these other two can speak to as well. Trying to get across international boundaries can be quite difficult. So, see if there's someone out there already that you can get involved with. First Global, which most of you will have heard of, is potentially a good way. If you want to get in touch with someone in another country, a First Global team can potentially be a group that can be converted into an FRC team later on, or start looking at FLL and FTC communities overseas as well if you're interested in starting new FRC teams overseas.
Thank you very much for that in-depth explanation. Now we have another question from Sarah Whiteford saying, what is the outreach structure on your team? Do you have separate sub-teams with student leads? Do those who do outreach still participate in technical sub-teams? And I've been leaving, we're going to give some action to Maslum. Would you like to answer that for us?
Yes, I have my fingers crossed for questions that I hope that I can answer, because my team has been working hard on this the last couple months. So our outreach is actually structured to be different sub-teams. Each of our initiatives is counted so our outreach is a sub-team in and of itself. On the team, we have our robot stuff and then our business. And under business, we have like marketing, operations, outreach, health and wellness. And then on our robot side, we have all of our robot sub-teams as well. So we are trying a couple of new things this season. So we'll hopefully post about what works for us at the end of it. But yeah, under outreach, each of the initiatives gets its own subcategory. And then each of the initiatives has its own set of leads. And these can be students that volunteer. We try to aim for at least 2 for each of them. And then if there are more students that are interested in certain initiatives, or if they require more leads, things like our Girls in STEM Olympics, which is a huge event that takes almost 8 months to plan. We have our New to Country program, which requires a lot of workshops, and we've had lots of great students working on that as team members as well. So yeah, we do at least 2 leads on each of our initiatives, and then we have, if there's a student that's really passionate about something, they can definitely join later on as a lead, and everyone else can be a member. And then in terms of what the requirements are, we're trying to do it so that everyone kind of gets an idea of outreach to a certain degree, especially when they're joining an FRC team, because you don't always know exactly what outreach is or what community help is until you're actually in it and you're actually doing it, especially in a world like FIRST where everything is kind of new and so different from the rest of your life. So we try to do it so that every student is participating in at least 1 to 2 different initiatives that we run, and then has the opportunity to lead at least one. So they're getting leadership opportunities. They're developing their skills when it comes to communication and organization and planning, and they're also getting to work in a team setting to give back to the community in an initiative that they're passionate about. So hopefully that answers the question. I don't know if I hit all the points, but that's how we do it. And yes, they are allowed to do robot things. They are encouraged to. We encourage all of our students to participate in both sides of the team. so that there is really no side. We try to just encourage different sub teams, and everyone can pick and choose what they want to do. But outreach is kind of a must almost for 1241, because we believe that there's something everyone can give back for.
Wow. Remind me whenever I try to make a team or a company in my future to go up to you, because that was great. Let's see. There are no more questions in the chat, but I have an open-ended question for all three of you, because I believe I've called all of you the same amount of times. I've tried to make sure everyone's talking all this. So I'm gonna give this open-ended. I want to know, because I also do outreach, but I'm not a speaker in this one, so I'm gonna have you guys give your wisdom. What do you think the skills of outreach give you in your life after high school when you were in first? What skills do you think would help in the real world when you do these kinds of outreach things in the first robotics program? Anyone can
well, I can go first on that, I guess. Actually, I was having a really interesting conversation the other day. We held an FTC tournament last weekend, and we had 5 or 6 of our students as cures and field reset on that day. And I was having an interesting conversation with another mentor afterwards, just talking about the difference that we see now looking at our students versus, well, at least my school students. I teach at a high school that's totally unrelated to my FRC team. I see such a huge difference in the confidence in the students that we have involved, like on the robot, but also particularly in the outreach stuff, and the students that go to events like that, just their confidence to go up to people and just start a conversation and approach adults they don't know and say, I need you to do this, or can you answer this question for me? Whereas, my high school students might find that really intimidating. The students that we have that get really involved in these outreach opportunities develop such a high level of confidence in their own ability, which I think is really important going forwards. So I do think it really helps to develop that sort of soft skills, I guess, that other aspect. In terms of practical skills, just the organizational stuff is really important. So being able to think through ahead of time, planning something that's going to involve a large number of people, a time commitment, potentially funding, like a facility that you're going to use, is really good practice for any career that you go into later on. But if you're doing event management or a business or anything like that, that's super important. And we've had students that have organized really quite large programs that I think they found very helpful later on, like our 24-hour call center. We had one student who led that back at the beginning, who's gone on to become an outreach mentor and study engineering. But I think that was really helpful to her to take charge of something like that, developing those organizational skills. Over to someone else.
I'll jump on and continue on with this question. So one big thing I have seen first help kids with, even especially myself, is communication skills. I've learned so many communication skills, all the new people I meet and all the things and events I get to speak at, all those opportunities have helped me build how I communicate with people. This event right now, and talking with all of you and answering these questions is a great way to learn how to communicate and teach others what you know and spread your knowledge. And it's so cool, when presenting the Big Bacon theory of image and marketing at competitions, you learn how public speaking and how to show others what you guys have learned and help them along with what they ask or need help with. And it's so cool seeing what me and my friends have learned through this program.
I'll round it off with agreement to both of them, because I think they covered it pretty much straight off the bat. My only thing to add is that in university, at least since I'm currently in university, something I've noticed at first and all the planning experience that has helped me with, especially when I've gone to see it in comparison to people who haven't been in first, is the confidence, like Mel said, that you have going into certain opportunities or interactions that you have with people, but also an understanding of what it really means to be a VP of finance or a VP of operations, because you've done it in a practical setting where you're running an event with companies or organizations, or where you're actually going out and acquiring these sponsorships and stuff. Sometimes in high school clubs, if you're starting a startup or if you're trying to do a nonprofit movement outside of high school and something that you want to pursue in the future, like they are real life skills that will teach you a lot more about the world and how to interact with different organizations or situations within the world, that a lot of the times like basic clubs and other opportunities that are provided to everyone or people that aren't in FIRST or haven't had experience with outreach might struggle with, or just not have the perspective for quite as in-depth as you might, because you've been doing it for so many years and you've been able to learn from your mistakes at an earlier age and be able to do it with a team, so that you can fall back and learn and grow together. So I think that's been a really cool difference to see between between FIRST people and some non-FIRST members that I've seen.
I might just add one more thing, actually. You made me just think of one more thing, if I can add something. I think that, I mean, it depends on your outreach programs, but you just made me think that actually something super important that you can get out of outreach is just exposure to a wider range of people. Particularly like hearing about your outreach efforts with like new arrivals in your country. And we do a lot of work with people in rural communities and disadvantaged communities as well. For some of our students who are coming from, a more privileged background, I think it's a really important opportunity for them to interact with people who are different to themselves and see how other people, the opportunities that other people have and how they interact with the world. And it just gives them just a much better perspective going forwards on what life can be like for people who aren't perhaps in the situation that they're in as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you for all three of your perspectives on that question. Let's see. We also we're coming in. Can we hear more from Alexis and Mel replying to outreach structure? So if you two would like to take the stage.
Yeah, I'll go with that. So for our outreach structure, we have a lot of different like big outreach programs like First Like a Girl, our Spark Kids, First Alliances, and all those are like so big and take so much effort and to work on individually that we assign student leads to each of those. Like I'm the First Like a Girl lead. We have another student who takes care of Spark, another student who takes care of First Alliances. And it teaches them like organization and all these amazing skills. And then we also do have like an outreach lead, and we have a student and a mentor as outreach leads who work together for like both different sides of that, so that all our outreach runs smoothly for the mentor side and the student side. And so it's just like about spreading all the work out so that there's not one person who has all this stuff on them that they are like worried about. So we spread that work out, we all work together to make sure it all runs smoothly. But earlier when you asked the question, you also said like, is outreach the only thing they can participate in? No. We make sure that whatever the student is interested in and what they want to do, they get to do. So like, we have students who are like, I really want to like learn more with interacting with our sponsors, but I also want to learn about like electrical and wiring a robot. And we let them do both of those. They can, whatever they're interested in, we will make sure they learn it and we teach it so that they get to learn both those skills and have like a wide range of knowledge. And it's so cool. So.
Okay, so on Team 3132, our hierarchy tends to be fairly flexible, but we do require that all students participate in outreach. We have a minimum number of hours that are required per year for students to participate on our team, and in particular to form part of our, what we call the travel team, because we have to travel every year to at least some of our events. So we have a minimum outreach requirement that means that every student has to participate in some outreach. But it doesn't actually go both ways, although that's fairly unusual. So we do have a couple of students who will purely focus on outreach and whose involvement in the robot is actually fairly limited. You can't go the other way. If you're mostly robot, you still have to do outreach. We just think that it's really important that all of the students come to appreciate the outreach side and the opportunities that can give people off the team. In terms of the structure, we've actually just graduated out our outreach captain, who was also the team captain, midway through this year. And so we're just starting to look again at who can potentially take over that role. But in terms of individual programs, basically, if that's the program that you've brought to us, or that's the proposal that you've brought to us as mentors, and that's something that you want to run with, then that's your program. So you take responsibility for that. And so we have a handful of students who are each responsible for different things that they've come up with, like well, this is now a few years back, but the 24-hour call center. We've got a student lead on our website as well, a student who was looking at a blood iron sensor a while back. So it's, yeah, you find something like Alexis was saying, find the thing that you're passionate about, and if you've got the will and the interest to make that work, then that's going to be your baby, and you get to run with that one. So that's kind of how we approach it here. Some of our bigger programs and longer lasting programs tend to be more mentor driven. We're very, very closely linked with First Australia because one of our former lead mentors is actually the director of that organization. And so some of our outreach efforts are very closely linked to First Australia. And because those are so big and so critical to their operations, they tend to be a bit more mentor driven. But the smaller ones are, student proposed and student driven.
Got it. Thank you very much for both of your inputs on outreach structure. Fantastic. We're almost out of time, about 7 minutes, so we're going to keep going through a couple more questions and hopefully end it off for this workshop. But another question coming in, this is an interesting one. How do you think hosting these fall virtual workshops helps to exemplify the importance of outreach to the FIRST community and beyond? These workshops are quite informational, so thank you, speakers. Oh, I didn't get thanked. Cry. No, I'm kidding. Whoever wants to take over this, I'm fine, because I don't remember who went where. So whoever wants to take over this question, or all three of you, go right ahead.
Look, I'll jump in. Just to say that, being in a totally different country and our interactions with you guys overseas are fairly limited. Having these events online is super cool for us because, for 10 years now, we've looked during the off season and we've seen the Cheesy Champs and all the other events that are run across the United States and thought, gosh, I wish I could go to those, or I wish I could go and sit in on that outreach panel, that chairman's panel, and see what everyone else is doing. And we've never been able to do that. And so to have them now online is super cool for us, just to be able to see what people are doing overseas. And these are teams now, because of the split champs, that we would never potentially be able to interact with. Like Theory 6, we'll never see you guys again, which is a real bummer. Yeah, split champs, very sad. So having this stuff online, just more as an audience member, is super cool for us in Australia, and I would imagine for teams overseas, like the guys in Taiwan and India as well, and New Zealand, to be able to actually, for the very first time, see what it is that you actually do at these events and what your outreach programs look like in a more deeper and detailed sense than what we can get from a conversation at Champs or just looking at your website. So we really appreciate having this online. We've tried to broadcast our stuff for a couple of years now, our Mentors Without Borders conference, but that's been primarily for a more internal audience. So we bring together Australian mentors every year and we do broadcast that conference, but that's more just for people who couldn't come to us rather than an overseas audience. And so, yeah, it's just been super cool to have the opportunity to see what's going on overseas, first of all, for the first time.
Any other two perspective on what they think about hosting the fall workshops?
I'll add on to that. I think with all the virtual conferences that have been taking place, it has given a really cool opportunity to that a wider audience can come and engage in those. Like with this online one, people just have to tune into YouTube, I believe it was, and can ask the questions. And so people from all over the world can be on this right now, asking their questions, learning more about outreach, help expand their team. And it's just a really cool way to get a lot more people involved and help them out with outreach. And it's also a great way of showing what the FIRST community can do to help people out and keep people engaged. And it's just really cool to see.
I think the only thing I have to add to that is that it's really been interesting to see the power of collaboration come through in this. And I think both Mel and Alexis kind of mentioned being able to interact with other people or just seeing other people through these online platforms, that has been a blessing in and of itself, but also kind of connecting people in a way that we haven't been able to before. It's almost as if this has given the opportunity for people to have more access to resources online and other teams, and encourage more teams to get out there and do outreach, even if things are different and the times are different because, in a way, accessibility has increased for some demographics and communities who might not be able to physically get to resources or workshops that are now being run virtually versus something that you might have to attend in person over a course of a weekend where you're busy or something like that. So it definitely has been, I think, a great way for people to access more resources once again and collaborate with other people that they might not have been able to before. And then we've seen that through this weekend, obviously, and being able to collaborate with these three people right here and all the other workshops going on.
Thank you, all three of you, on your perspectives on that question. Hold on, are we gonna see? Oh, 2 minutes. Okay. Do you think we can do one more question? I think we can do one more question. Come on, there has to be another question. Someone in the chat, cover us with one more question. Let's keep it completely all the way. Yes, let's go. Really quick. Gonna go fast. How do you plan to make outreach on a greater level for yourselves and your team in the future? And what things should you look at while finding improvements on your outreach system? I'm just going to go fast. I'm going to pick person. Masum, go. You want to answer that?
If you're looking for improvements, really just evaluate your previous years. If you're repeating an event that you've already done, try to find if you have numbers or find stats that you might have collected to look at ways that you can improve it numerically or analytically, and then go from there, because that's a good indication of what's going right and what's going wrong in terms of improving.
Thank you very much. Do we have to end soon, or can we get someone else to answer? Or okay, we'll do that. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching this workshop. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much to our speakers, Masum, Alexis, and Mel, for tuning in and giving us their time. Thank you to our audience. You've been fantastic. Not a single dry moment has been in the chat. We've been able to keep it going. Thank you very much to everyone, and hope you enjoy the rest of the workshops. Have a great CCC.
Hi everyone, welcome to the remote teamwork workshop. Hopefully you guys are ready for today's discussion. It's going to be pretty cool. We have two amazing speakers today. So if you guys would like to go ahead and introduce yourselves, Josh, if you would like to go ahead and start off.
Sure. I am Shosh Cohen. I'm one of the lead mentors for Team 1868, the Space Cookies. And when I'm not doing that, I work at Stanford University, where I direct community engaged learning for engineering, and I teach the mechanical engineering senior capstone sequence.
I'm Gabby Skilling. I'm a part of 1678 Citrus Circuits. I am the current vice captain as well as the current business and media lead.
I'm from Team 2073, and I'm going to be the moderator for this workshop. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I believe, Gabby, you're going to be talking about remote team meeting tips and tricks.
Yeah, so we'll start off just talking about the pros and cons of remote teamwork. I think we can all notice that remote teamwork definitely is different from when you're working in person. And there are a couple of different things that you should be picking up on or noticing if you haven't already. So first of all, we'll start off with the cons. There's a lot more miscommunication, and it's just a lot more difficult in general to communicate successfully during remote teamwork. This happens for a couple of different reasons. It's harder to get a hold of people, it's easier to get confused, and you can't ask as many questions for clarification, and you also don't really have these nonverbal cues that you're going off of while you're communicating in person that can indicate or answer some of your questions as well. So you're going to have more miscommunication and more mistakes from communication that are going to result from that. There's also going to be a difficulty in collaboration. This also happens for a couple of reasons. A really big one is the fact that it is difficult to communicate. So it's harder to set up and figure stuff out while you're collaborating. Another thing for collaboration is that it's difficult to get everyone on the same call. You have a limited time frame, and you're going to run into other things like tech difficulties while you're trying to collaborate. You also can't be in person for collaboration, and I'm sure that makes it really difficult for a lot of the technical sub-teams that are trying to work on things like the robot together or like programming and code together. Next, technological challenges that you're going to face during remote teamwork. You may not have the equipment that you need at home, and you may not have access to the tools that you need, and you may also be facing some other tech issues like some faulty Wi-Fi, poor internet connection, or maybe not having access to a computer or a device that you would need to use in a normal year. Another thing is that you really don't have a lot of downtime during remote teamwork. You used to have these really strict schedules that we followed for the most part, right? We had a very solid work day. We knew when we started, we knew when we ended. A lot of us in school, our days were organized by bells, and we knew exactly where we were going and where we needed to go. So now everything's changed a lot, and you're doing school at home. A lot of us are working at home, and a part of that is that we really don't have downtime or a chance to unplug because it's just so much easier for us to keep on working and form this tunnel vision where we're really just trying to get as many tasks done as we can. There's also some isolation that a lot of us experience right now. We can't really go out and see other people, which is important for the safety of everyone. But a part of that is isolation, and we do start to miss the teammates that we used to hang out with, and we miss all of our friends and what made FRC really a lot of fun besides the education and competition. So that's something that I'm sure is hitting a lot of us right now. Next are the pros. So first of all, we do have flexible scheduling now that we don't have these really strict schedules for school and work, and we just have a little bit more of an open day. It does make scheduling a little bit more easier and a little bit more available. There's also no commute. I know for a lot of teams, there was definitely a drive to try to get to wherever you were going. And now, you don't need to worry about a commute. You don't need to worry about walking, biking, or driving to get to your team meeting place because now you just log on through whatever device you have. And you also do see some increased productivity. And I know it doesn't really feel like it right now, but there are a lot of things that are being done and accomplished during quarantine. And it's also important to remember that every accomplishment that you're getting done is an important and a big one right now. So an important thing with remote teamwork is to embrace whatever change you're seeing. Obviously, we can't have the exact same protocols and the exact same standards and ways of doing things that we did while we were in person. Things have changed, but that does present us with some unique and new opportunities. So first of all, transitioning to Onshape, which is cloud-based CAD. If you haven't done so already, this is a great time to try to shift to Onshape because it lets you work with several people on a CAD file. It makes it a lot easier for collaboration, and it's a good practice to have. We also have the opportunity for hands-on training through video. This could be showing people machines, it could be working with tools, running through programming, whatever it is. We do have the chance to establish these videos that we normally wouldn't think about in a normal year that can be put towards training. And this is really important because what you're going to start develop is some documentation and a solid foundation for education for future years. And this is going to be a really great thing to rely upon in the future. and you can go into more detail and get some unique shots or just really get up close with the camera when you're working on hands-on training. So that's also good. There's also a possibility for having some kits at home, whether that's a soldering kit, whether you're putting together a small robot, maybe working with circuits, whatever it is. You could also have these smaller at-home kits. These kits don't need to be expensive. You don't need to have these industry-grade materials, especially if they're limited, especially if funds are a difficulty right now, which I'm sure it is for a lot of teams. They could be really simple, and you could just be trying to get across a lot of engineering concepts, which is also just as great. There's also some outreach going on through video and through sending kits home. This is great. It's a opportunity to try and reach more people, more communities that we may not be able to reach in a normal year, just like the fall workshops this year. So if you would like to check out some different outreach videos, we did have one on Outreach for Success a minute ago, and we also had one on virtual RoboCamps earlier today. When those are published, I do encourage you to check them out if you believe that they will help you. Another possibility is machines at home. If you have the ability to take machines home, if you have the space, it's a great opportunity to, transport a machine to a veteran member's house and have them work on whatever they can in that time.
And I'll add, one of the things that we're doing is we're setting up a small satellite lab, which is basically, well, not basically, it is a garage. So what we've done is brought some of the basic equipment and materials from our lab, plus our robots, plus a few other things. And when and if we are actually able to meet in person and touch the robot, we will be doing that there. We're also planning to send home parts and equipment with girls who can then work on things at home, and we can attach it to the robot at the lab later on. So that's not normally something that we would be doing. We're just going to be doing it this year.
Sounds awesome. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to a variety of the communication tools that your team could use.
So communication right now is extremely important, especially when you're communicating over several platforms, because you can't have these really simple and quick team-wide announcements like you did before. So a lot of people are receiving a lot of information now all of a sudden. A lot of it's coming in really quickly for us, and we have a lot of uncertainties right now because of quarantine. So your communication in general is going to be very important, and you need to make sure when you're communicating that you are being very consistent in your communication, and this could come in a couple of different forms. So maybe the time that you're communicating, or maybe the message you're communicating, or maybe the platform that you're using. Try to make it as consistent as possible and as easy for people to find, because that's going to be very helpful for people right now when all of our communication is coming in virtually. Another thing with communication is to be as transparent as possible. So whatever information you have, please try to make that available, because it will help people a lot in the long run, either with relieving stress, decision-making, whatever it could be. Lastly, with communication, we don't have these open office rules that we used to have, open office hours where you could really go up and talk to someone at any point in time, whether that be a mentor or another student. So having just a dedicated time for yourself daily where you're going to be able to sit down, check your communication, make sure you're caught up on everything could be very helpful. Now we're going to get into some of the different communication platforms. I'll just start with Slack. So I'm sure a lot of us are very familiar with Slack. It's used by a lot of different FRC teams. We use Slack very often, and we use it to communicate with our team in general. We have Slack organized into a lot of different channels. We have a general channel where all of our team members are, any parents that happen to be on the Slack, as well as all of our mentors. Then we have it divided into smaller channels past that, with each sub-team, which is a specialization. So you could have a sub-team for electrical, another sub-team for hardware design, and so on. And those all have the sub-team members in that group. And then you can go even more specific past just those general channels.
Okay, you can see there are a lot of different opportunities to communicate up here on the screen, and we're not going to talk through all of them. I think at this point everyone is very familiar with Zoom, but for those of you who are not using Zoom, there are some alternatives. Some people are limited by the 40-minute cutoff or whatever their school is providing. We use a platform called Blue Jeans. Blue Jeans is actually one of our sponsors, so we don't have to pay for it. Different from Slack in some ways. It doesn't have the kind of time cutoff that Slack does, or excuse me, that Zoom does for free accounts. So that's been good for us. I want to also point out email. I do a lot of communicating with students, and one thing students really don't love is getting lots of emails. One thing parents do love is getting emails. So we tend to use email more for important or official communications, things that we want parents to see, things that we want to see people, that we want people outside the team to see. And Toucan, which is the one you see there at the bottom right, that's actually a platform that we are beta testing that was developed by a group of students. And think of that as Zoom for very casual mingling. So instead of having to formally you divide yourselves up into breakout groups, you can do it on the fly, and you can kind of flip from one group to another. And we are going to be talking with Toucan to see if we can make that available to some other FRC teams, because it's a great tool for getting to know people. Mackenzie, I think you're going to talk about Discord.
Yeah, so I know on Team 2073, when we do our team meetings, we use Zoom. But for us to be able to communicate with our members specifically, we use Discord just because it's something that a lot of our students usually have just for communicating with school or something. So it's easier for our students to really communicate with each other. It's just something that we find really useful for us. All right, so we will now be moving on to how Team 1678 onboards their new team members.
Yeah, so a really unique challenge that I think teams are facing this year is onboarding new members and making them feel welcome, because we didn't have the chance to meet a lot of our new members in person. And we really want to make sure that they feel like they're a part of the team, that they have a community that they can turn to, and that they have a safe space. So here is the 1678 approach to onboarding new members. We did have a lot of group meetings where we had a team movie night, or maybe we played a Kahoot, something like that, where it went for the whole general team. And we also do have our weekly meetings and our sub-team meetings as well. These meetings are additional, they're purely social, and they're meant to allow members to get to know each other better. So we split off into smaller groups of about 4 people, which we found was necessary for us because we're such a large team. If you're a smaller team, you may not need to split up into so many groups. But we split up into 4 groups, or into groups of 4, and these groups went across sub-teams, and they also went across grades. So you had groups with mechanical members that were seniors, as well as newer students that specialized in something like PR instead. We really made sure that this went across the entire team, because this we felt was the best way to make sure everyone was socialized and not just inside their sub-team. These groups would meet 4 times per month for a minimum of 30 minutes. Most teams met for about an hour, and they would play games together, they would bond, they would do icebreakers, anything to get to know each other better and to make friends, to make sure everyone had another person they could turn to. And it was common for these smaller groups to mix and meet. So you could have 2 groups meet together and then have a group of 8 playing together instead.
All right. And then, Josh, if you'd like to talk about your team and how you guys onboard new members.
Yeah, so it's similar in some ways and different in a few ways. I think probably most of you know that our team is all girls, and we're a community team and a Girl Scout troop. So we have girls that come from many, many different schools. I believe we have something like 22 different schools this year, which means that girls coming in and girls who are already there don't necessarily know each other and won't necessarily have opportunities to bump into each other during the day the way some other teams might. So we have what we call the Rookie Cookie Program, which is kind of what it sounds like. We pair up our new rookies with a veteran cookie, and we want them to have a relationship where our rookies have someone they can reach out to with questions, kind of an ask me anything. So they should feel comfortable going to their cookie and getting information, getting tips on what they should be learning, where they should be going, what kind of workshops they should do, how to develop their interests, things like that. We offer multiple workshops every weekend, so we have a schedule that we publish well in advance so people are aware of what's going to be offered. We will repeat workshops, and we try to make it so that it's very clear if one is a prerequisite for another. Many of them, you don't necessarily have to go to them in sequence, but some of them you do. So we want to make sure that everyone understands when they should be going to a workshop followed by another workshop, followed by another workshop. We have our full team meeting on the first Friday of every month. During the build season or in competition season, we meet much more frequently, but in the fall, where we're focused on onboarding and training, we have fewer full team meetings. Our team is also pretty large, not as large as Citrus Circuits, but pretty large. And it can be a little unwieldy to try and have conversations with that many people at the same time. So those are more presentations of what's been going on with the whole team. We also have ongoing projects, and we try to get our newer members involved with those. And those can be anything from working on code to working on, in this case, last year's robot, to working on outreach kinds of projects. And we want to try to bring people up to speed as soon as possible, but based on their interests, so they can start to get engaged in those projects. And then finally, I mentioned we're a Girl Scout troop. There are also many Girl Scout programs that happen throughout the year, and we strongly encourage our new girls to engage with those whenever possible.
Cool. So I believe Gabby will now be talking about how to practice good Zoom habits.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of other tips for remote teamwork, just that we're going to go over really quickly. And first of all, while you're working remotely, it's really important that you get to know your people first. Know whoever you're interacting with, know whoever is working behind the screen. I know right now it's really easy for us to only focus on whatever work we're given and really just trying to get that done. We can be very task-oriented right now and really just feel like we need to almost be like a machine, just pumping out as much work as we can. So getting to know the other people that you're working with is going to be really important. It's going to help you be more considerate. You're going to realize that they have other things on their plate too, and it's always great to have someone that you know is working towards the same mutual goal as you. Next is to show your face. This is really important for a lot of reasons. First of all, because we really don't get to see people outside of our family that often. So showing your face, getting to interact with other people, especially your teammates that you miss, is really important. It's going to help us break some of the isolation that we have all been feeling. On top of that, showing your face during the Zoom call does lead to some increased productivity in communication because it's easier to have that casual conversation. You can read the nonverbal cues of the other person. You feel more comfortable asking these super casual questions, especially if it's in a smaller Zoom call. So show your face as much as you possibly can. Another thing, whether you're training or working together, show what you are doing. Do not tell them what you're doing, even though it's really easy right now to just tell someone what they're doing virtually. You really want to show them as much as possible. Now, when you're looking at collaboration with this, say you run into an issue, if you were meeting in person and you ran into an issue, you wouldn't verbally tell someone the issue you were running into. You might try it really quickly, but you'd probably find that you're running into some issues conveying your idea. So you'd normally turn and show them your computer screen, or you'd show them the issue you're facing on the robot. And it's important to try and do the same thing that you can over Zoom. So whether that's showing through your camera, sharing your screen on a Zoom call, whatever you're doing, showing and letting that person take in whatever you're working on together visually is going to be very important and also really helpful. Also, just for training in general, giving people that visual cue and showing what you're doing as you're doing it is really important for training. A lot of newer members do pick up on what veteran members are doing just casually in a meeting, and they're going to notice some details that a presenter or a trainer wouldn't necessarily think to include in a presentation that's still going to be necessary. So show as much as you can and don't tell, and no one wants to sit through another lecture. Next, check in with your smaller groups. So on a larger team like 1678, where we have about 105 students, the captain and vice captain can't check in with everyone. And even if we did, we really wouldn't be able to check in with them as much as we possibly could and really be as attentive as possible. So check in with smaller groups where you can, whether that could be your team bonding and meeting group, or if that's just your sub-team. Make sure everyone is doing okay. We're all facing a lot of individual challenges right now. I'm sure a lot of us are experiencing a form of burnout. So having an open line of communication and understanding where everyone is at in remote teamwork is really important. Lastly, celebrate individual and team successes together. This helps us remember that we're not alone. We're all working towards our mutual goals, and we're really happy to see the success of another individual. which is all really great, and it reminds everyone that they're valued and they're appreciated on the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really important to focus on having good Zoom etiquette. So I think you guys talked about this a bit before, but if you guys would like to go into more detail about some of the icebreakers and team building activities that your teams go through.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start with this. As I mentioned, we have girls on our team that I've never even met, which is highly unusual for this stage in the school year. So we have been trying to come up with some creative ways to get to know people. And the thing you see there on the top left, that is just a bingo card. And you can go online and create a custom bingo card that, instead of having letters, just letters and numbers, in our case, it includes interesting facts that you can go and then find individuals on the team that have those characteristics. So, for example, it could be someone who speaks more than one language, or someone who was born in another country, or someone who plays piano, something like that. So we create these bingo cards, and we put everyone into, in this case, we were using Toucan for this, and you can meander throughout the group of people and try to locate girls that will let you fill in your bingo card. And of course, we have incredibly valuable prizes for the winners. Okay, not so much valuable. And then we talk, I think a lot of teams are using Kahoot and in different ways. So we use Kahoot at the end of our workshops just to validate that people understand the content that was just presented to them. So that's one way of using that. Gabby?
Yeah, so in terms of understanding concepts, all of that, after a lesson, we tend to use our Google Forms to create a quiz. And we like to use Kahoot more often for some lighthearted competition in between sub-teams or just as a team in general. A lot of the times what we'll do is hold a Kahoot one time, maybe twice a year for the whole team. And in that Kahoot, we'll go over a lot of random but general team knowledge and trivia. And we do have great prizes. The top prize does get bragging rights, which is just about the best as it gets. And you can also have Kahoots in between sub-teams or just in your own sub-team as well. And we find it's a great way to just interact and have a little bit of fun competition.
Yeah, that sounds great. I know for our team, we do use Kahoot as more of like a competition, like Abby was saying. That's something that we find is really fun. But most recently, we've been using Among Us. If you guys haven't heard, it's a very popular app now. But it's really fun because it allows our students on our team to get to know each other on a more personal level. So it's like aside from just the usual robotics, mechanical programming, all that kind of stuff. So everyone kind of gets to know each other better. And just as a disclaimer, if you guys have any questions, oh sorry, if you guys have any questions at any time, you can go ahead and type it into the end. But we will have a few polls coming up pretty soon, so you guys can answer and participate in those if you would like. So for now, we will also moving on about how you can use meetings as work sessions because no one wants to be in another lecture. You want them to be interactive and fun for everyone.
All right, so on business and media, we like to use at least one of our Zoom meetings a week for a work session, and that's because a lot of our work depends pretty heavily on collaboration between individuals in the sub-team. So here are a couple of different tips and tricks when you're trying to get a productive work session, because I know it's very difficult sometimes to get to that productive zone because you either feel like socializing instead or you feel really awkward and uncomfortable on a Zoom call. So we break into smaller groups. We have some general announcements at the beginning for the whole team. Then we go into the business and media call, and we have about 10 to 12 students in that call. And then we break out into breakout rooms even further of about 4 to 6 students. We try to keep it at about 4 to 6 because we found that's a good range where it doesn't feel too awkward. Like you don't feel like you have too many people, and you also don't feel like it's only you and one other person in the room. So breaking out into smaller groups helps, also because you're going to have a lot of different flows of conversation in a breakout room. And on Zoom, you really only have one audio output. So if you try to have several conversations, it's really not going to work. Another thing for the work sessions is to receive real-time feedback. We found that this was really important and really helpful because it's easier to construct your feedback and better deliver it when you're in person and you're able to answer their questions, get the clarifications across for the other members. So that way they really know what they need to change, and hopefully they can use it as a learning experience and opportunity. And that doesn't happen as often over Slack or email or however you choose to communicate. Another thing, and I did mention this earlier, was learning through observing the veterans. So this goes for the breakout rooms too. Just setting up a couple of rookies in a room with a veteran and having the veteran work and explain things as they go while they're showing their screen is really helpful because it's going to show them what solid procedures have already been put in place that they should be following, as well as some good habits to follow. And it does set the tone for the behavior on the team as well. So it does make it important to show, not tell. If you are just telling, again, it's going to end up being just like another lecture. We all sit through those for class. We all sit through those meeting calls, all of that. So try to make this as collaborative as you possibly can. Lastly, collaborate. Get their feedback, get their input. This is your one window of time where you can all speak, get out as many ideas as you can, and work together. Because that's when you're going to be the most effective and most productive, as opposed to trying to collaborate through email or through Slack. So these are all just really important things to keep in mind if you're going to have a work session.
And just one thing to add to that, as a mentor, we have responsibility for supervising the students that we're working with, which normally means you are physically in the room and you probably have more than one adult in the room with students. Obviously, when you're doing this remotely, you're not physically there, but we are still obligated to keep an eye on things. And one of the things that this lets us do is have students go off and do work together in groups, and we can just pop in every so often and see how things are going. And we try to do that as non-disruptively as possible, but it gives us a way to keep an eye on things without overseeing too heavily.
So here we have a couple of different work session ideas. We realized that the work session for each sub-team is going to look different, right? So first, just for business and media or any type of PR, operations, sub-team that you have, a couple of different ideas you could do during a work session is work on a social media post or any form of writing. Working on writing and getting real-time feedback in a work session is always really helpful. It's going to lead to the quickest road to improvement in students' writing. You could also work on planning your budget. It's great when you have multiple people to give you input. Working on newsletters, again, that's really good for collaboration. On our team, we don't have just one person working on the newsletter. We try to include several people, as well as working on website updates. All of these are great activities where you receive feedback. For other sub-teams, you could be working on code. You could troubleshoot in pairs or small groups if you found that is a system that works well for you. You could work on a brainstorm over a call to develop remote outreach opportunities, maybe go through a dry run or a test run, anything like that. For any type of design team, you could receive feedback on CAD, especially for newer members, and you could brainstorm together or just work together on a call. And another one, just for mechanical in general, is to pair up and use building kits. It's always great because then if you have a question, it's maybe something that your partner could answer or show you.
Right, that sounds awesome for some work session ideas. I know those are some things that my team might be looking forward towards doing. All right, so now we're going to be moving on to the polls. This is going to be the first poll question. In the YouTube chat, I also put in the link for you guys to be able to join. So that should be able to show up. If you guys would like to put up the QR code, you can scan that as well. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and start the poll. First question is, what tools or equipment have you provided for students to learn at home? There are a variety of options: nothing, major equipment, machine tools like Abby had mentioned earlier, some kits for whatever your sub-team might be working on, so soldering for electrical, electronics kits, small robot kits, low-tech prototype kits, or something else. If you haven't done any of these, you can go ahead and select something else, or you can type it in the chat of what you guys have been working with. See if anyone thing.
Yeah, so David just put the URL for the poll into the chat if you don't have the QR code.
Mhm. Awesome. So someone said someone else. Would you mind like typing in the chat maybe what you have done instead of these options?
Give this another couple minutes. Well, at the end of this presentation, we're going to have a few links to some of the materials that we and some other teams that we're working with have found useful. The small robot kit, for teams that have new people that are not going to get a chance to build a robot this season, sometimes it doesn't really feel like you're on a robotics team when you're not actually making a robot. So we have looked into some equipment that we can send home with our students where they will actually build something that they can create and program, which is the important distinction between other electronics kits and a robot kit. So we want people to have an opportunity to make a machine do what they want it to do. And again, we'll provide some links for the types of things that we're looking at for doing that. Yeah. So, say in the chat also there's a comment about the toothpick challenge. You can do it with spaghetti. You can do it with other materials. The low-tech prototype kit that we're using is sort of like that. Think toothpicks and paper cups. I mean, it's things like that. There are a lot of things you can actually do to learn engineering concepts without spending a ton of money. Or importantly, to a lot of school districts and to Girl Scouts and to other authorities, we want to be super, super safe with these things. So there's some things we just can't send home with students because they could be unsafe.
Makes sense. All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next poll question, but all of those answers were great. Okay, so the next one is, what are some of your team's recent accomplishments? So that can be anything listed here: new leadership, new students, any virtual outreach events that you have been working on, team bonding, virtual training, kind of anything that we've been talking about so far in the presentation. And again, if you have something else to add that's maybe not on this list, if you could type it in the chat and let us know what your team has been working on. That's good. So it seems like a lot of teams have been getting a lot of new students, which is very good.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we wanted to include this poll is I've talked with some students from our team and from other teams, and it can kind of feel like you're not getting a lot done this year because, again, you're not meeting, or some of the things you'd be doing in a very hands-on way, you're not doing either at all, or you're doing it in a very different way this year. And it can kind of feel like you're treading water and not really doing a lot. In fact, teams are getting a lot done. And one of the reasons we put this question in here, it goes back to what Gabby was saying earlier, that it's really important to celebrate successes. And recruiting in a year where you're going to bring students in who aren't really going to get to do robotics in the traditional sense is huge. It's important to share the fact that students are still interested in your team and your team is still interested in students. I don't know if Gabby and Mackenzie want to say a little bit more about other things you can celebrate this year.
Yeah, so it's just really important in general, just like Josh said, to recognize all of the accomplishments that you're having. I know right now it can feel like we all get stuck in a rut, like we really just have more that we have to do. So it's important to take a step back and look at everything that you already have done. And another reason that this is important is because these can be used a lot for social media posts. And I know a lot of teams right now are experiencing a difficulty with their social media because they're not going to competition, which is what they would normally post about, or they don't have a build season, or they don't have their normal outreach events. But any one of these accomplishments up here could be turned into a social media post. Whether you're celebrating your new team bonding program with your new students or you're introducing your new leadership team, maybe you post or publish some of the virtual training that you've done to provide resources to other teams, or maybe you share what your at-home prototyping methods are. A lot of these can be shared with other FRC teams, and I'm sure other FRC teams would be very happy to see and hear what everyone else is up to.
Right, and then kind of second from the bottom there, this year presents a very unique opportunity in the sense that you can do some volunteering that's related to COVID-19. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, but the reality is there's a lot of things that teams can do to help their local communities. So we have done some of the things I think that quite a few other teams have participated in, such as making many, many face shields. Towards the beginning of the pandemic, these were delivered to first responders. We have donated some extra materials and, frankly, snacks from our lab that we can't use right now. And we had quite a few girls participate in an effort to sew face masks for a Girl Scout troop whose members are composed. Their parents are all farm workers. So when they move into the area, they usually come with not a lot of stuff. And in this case, they all needed to be outfitted with masks. So we had girls work on that.
Those all sound like great ideas. Okay, so we're going to move on to our third poll question, which is, what is your team's most effective remote bonding approach? I believe we talked about this a little bit earlier, but if your team has done any of these things or something else, you can go ahead and type them in the chat or select whichever one applies to you. Some team game nights. Makes sense. My team does that a lot too. Most recently we've done like Among Us game nights. We do them like almost every Sunday or like every other Sunday. So it's really fun because there's like just a group of us that does that.
Do you get the same group coming back every week, or is it different students each time?
Yeah, it's mainly the same group because we're like all available at the same time, because by Sunday night we've all done our homework, so it's kind of just our way to relax before the school week starts.
Yeah, I think eating on Zoom is maybe not people's favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
We were kind of hoping we'd see a little bit more of movies. So if anyone has a great suggestion for what would make a good team movie, we'd really love to hear about that. So there's a question in the chat about whether or not we have more people joining this year or fewer members. And I can speak in our case, it really didn't change. We are capped. I think a lot of teams have a maximum number of students that they can support, and we also do that. So we went through our typical recruiting, which includes having girls come in and do a few workshops. Normally they'd be coming to our lab to do that, and this year they did them online. So we have them do a bit of that, and then talk to us a little bit about why they're interested in joining the team. And as with most years, we unfortunately have more students interested than we can take, and but we haven't seen a decrease in interest. Gabby and Mackenzie?
Yeah, I can speak for 1678. We do have about the same amount of interest as we have had in previous years. We did our normal outreach methods that we did to recruit new students, and we interviewed all the students before we admit anyone onto the team. I think the difficulty this year is more in keeping students engaged, especially a lot of our mechanical students who can't physically be in the shop because they tend to enjoy more hands-on tasks, like actually working on the machine or working on wiring, as opposed to a lot of this virtual learning that we have going on right now. So I would say that is where our struggle is currently. And your follow-up question, more bonding involvement compared to other years, I would say we have made a more active effort towards team bonding than we have in previous years because everything is virtual. Although I think the team bonding in general was also more of a challenge this year because everything was virtual and because you couldn't go and meet someone and, you know, break the ice and have a casual conversation in person.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree. For our team, for our team, that's something that we've been working on is trying to get more bonding events. But I think for our team, we do have a smaller team, so we don't have like a team member cap. But for us, it's been actually easier for us to get new members this year. Like we've had more members than we have past years. And I think it's just because for our team, we usually meet like after school for really long hours. And since everyone has such a flexible schedule now, they're able to meet whenever we meet. So it's better for everyone. So I think that might be something for our team.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because, like I said, our team comes from all over the place, and our lab is not necessarily so easy to get to. And coming to workshops, for example, that's not really a bonding event, but coming to workshops is actually pretty easy. You just go in and log on, as opposed to planning your whole day around actually getting to the lab. So that's actually been a kind of a plus.
Makes sense. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our fourth and final poll. So what type of outreach has your team done? We listed some of them here. I believe Gabby and Josh talked about some of them earlier. But of course, if you have any other community volunteer work or something else that your team has done recently or in the past, you can go ahead and type it in. Tops. That sounds good. I think it's definitely a lot easier to do it this year just because it is virtual and people can tune in whenever. So that's really cool.
Okay, I'll put a plug in for STEM badges for Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. Just as it's hard for us to do robotics, it's actually hard for them to do robotics as well. And so if you can help scouts work on these things, it's really it's a really nice thing to do for them. And we will be happy to share some of the things that we do with Girl Scouts. I think, Mackenzie, you said does your team also work with Girl Scouts? Or maybe it's
No,
just
they
you.
don't. I'm a Girl Scout myself, so I
Okay,
know
that's
about
fine.
like the journeys and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And also remote mentoring, like we do remote mentoring in typical years. I think most of you do. Anyone who is involved with the Compass Alliance is doing remote mentoring. And I don't know if there's been a pickup this year in the volume of teams working on that, but I'm sure there will be when we get to the actual competition season. So there'll be some really good opportunities there to work with other teams.
Good. Okay, I think we got mostly everyone on this poll. So if we could go back to our slideshow so that Josh can talk about some mentor insights.
Okay, I just wanted to say a few things here because this is a super challenging year for our students. It's also kind of challenging for mentors because, frankly, we're not maybe as frustrated as students are, but it can be hard to keep people engaged when things are so different. So one of the things I think is really important is modeling the right behavior, which is staying engaged with the team, logging on to all the calls, attending the workshops, encouraging your team members to participate. We try to check in with all of our team members periodically. We did this at the end of last year. We checked in with all, in this case, 66 girls, to hear what they thought about the season and to get their perspectives on things we should do. And I think it's very important to stay in touch with your students. Second thing is understand what your team wants to do this year. There's going to be lots of different opportunities. Normally there's a robot game and some other things that you can apply for with specific awards, but basically everyone is doing the same thing. This year, there's going to be an array of things that you can choose from, and making sure your team understands what those things are and that you understand where they want to focus is going to be important. Just on a conversation I had yesterday, first is going to be providing some additional guidance on what does it mean to be successful at the Innovation Challenge or the Game Design Challenge. So specific criteria for how that will be assessed and judged. And I think that will help teams as they start to put their priorities together for the competition season. For short-term investments, we are doing some things this year that we would normally not do. We talked a little bit about things like sending kits home with students. Normally, we would be sharing lots of equipment. We have people come into the lab and use the same equipment. In this case, we will be sending some things home that normally we would not spend so much on an individual basis. That's going to be different for every team. And that's why it's also important to have these kind of low-tech, lo-fi ways of doing prototyping at home. Getting creative, in this case, we're getting creative about our lab space because we cannot access our lab until NASA opens up. So we have this satellite lab that we're setting up and just different ways to do meetings and activities. It's just nothing should be off the table with respect to how you get your team together this year. And the next page, yeah. I mentioned checking in with every team member. Normally we can go for walks or just pull someone aside and have a conversation with them. Not so easy on Zoom, so you have to be really intentional about how you do that this year. Gabby mentioned this, Mackenzie mentioned this. Celebrating the things that are good, also really important. And that was, as I said, why we put that question in the poll. There are a lot of good things happening. There are a lot of successes happening. And making sure that you make everyone aware of them and have your team share them on your social media, have your team share them with their parents, have your team share them with each other, and make sure everyone is aware of the good things that are happening. Keeping your sponsors up to date. This is important this year because sponsors, frankly, are not quite sure what we're all going to be doing. And they do want to understand how we're spending their valuable resources. So we just did an update for our sponsors, and we will do another one when we get a little bit more certain about specifically what we're going to be focusing on this year. But just sending them a note every so often. Normally we can send something in person or even go see them. We can't do that this year, so we are using electronic thank you cards that people can sign from wherever they are and get that off to our sponsors. And then lastly, being available to other teams. And I think most teams do this anyway. Again, you have to be really intentional about doing it this year. It's almost like setting up office hours where teams know when and where to reach you if they have questions. Compass Alliance is a great way to do this. So I think a lot of teams that are attending today and a lot of teams are either part of the Compass Alliance or use the Compass Alliance, which is a terrific resource for making yourselves available to other teams. Okay. Next. All right. We're not going to click through on these links here, but we put some resources and ideas in here on things you can get to provide to your team, things that we're all using. I think the Citrus Circuit soldering kit wasn't quite ready for prime time, so I think that's a link to the website where you can ask to have information when it's available. FIRST has put out some guidance for the season, and it's specific for how to have your team meet and behave in the age of COVID. So that guidance has been super helpful. I just mentioned Compass Alliance, which is a terrific resource. The new FIRST Mentor Network, if your team is short on a mentor in a particular area, or you have mentors that find themselves with extra time, that's a matching service for teams and mentors, and it's also really helpful. And then Gabby, do you want to talk about the RoboCamps?
Yeah. So we were able to host some virtual RoboCamps this year, which was very exciting. We had about anywhere from 16 to 24 4th to 8th graders in a camp with about 8, 16, 78 members and a mentor on each call. And we were able to help them build a small robot through plastic connectable pieces. They built it from scratch, competed in some challenges using materials that they had at home, like books and paper, and they were also able to code that robot. So we do have a workshop that went through the 1678 RoboCamps. So I would encourage you to look at that workshop once it has been published. It was at 9 a.m. this morning. But we went through the process for us to be able to shift our virtual camps onto a virtual platform.
Oh, and one thing I should have included on here, but I didn't, is First at Home. So First has come up with a very wide array of essentially lessons. They're geared towards mentors and teachers, but absolutely available to students. And they will take you through how to teach robotics and basics of coding and things like that to your students. And they're available for all age groups, so K through 12.
Sounds great. And then this is just our last slide. So if you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in. But these are some of our emails if you guys have any questions about our team or anything that you've heard today in the presentation. I don't think I see any questions yet.
Okay. People might be questioned out.
They might be.
Okay, well, if you, I'm sure you can tell from the emails that are up there, those are the main team emails for each of our team. And I think if you use them, you can ask questions about anything, not just remote teamwork, but anything related to First or how we're doing things this year.
Sounds good. So since we don't have any questions, I think we're going to go ahead and end the workshop. But Gabby and Josh, thank you so much for being able to share some of your knowledge on remote teamwork. It was really fun.
Thank you both.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, welcome to the Chairman's and Awards presentation panel for the Capital City Classic Fall Workshops 2020. We've got some great panelists here today. We're very excited for all the expertise they bring to us. So we're going to start out real quick with some introductions, get to know everybody.
Hello, my name is Sarah Wolf, and I am a senior on FRC Team 701, the RoboBikes. I've been on this FRC team all 4 years of high school, but I've been involved in robotics at some level since 5th grade. Some fun facts about me: I presented Chairman's for 2 years now at 4 different competitions, including Houston, because we won at Davis in 2019, whoop whoop. But I've been presenting in Pitt Awards since my freshman year, and I've won Engineering Inspiration twice with my team. I was also a Dean's List semifinalist last year.
Hi, I'm Jessica Fuller. I am a senior on Team 1902 Exploding Bacon. We won the World Chance Chairman's Award last year. I was a Chairman's presenter last year, and on my team, I am the Hall of Fame lead. I present our BBTIM, which is our Big Bacon Theory of Imagery and Marketing presentation. That's me.
Okay, hi, my name is Allison He, and I am a senior on the FRC team TC65, which is one of the only all-girls robotics team in the US. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys about how our team got into applying for the Chairman's Award, because before that we did not have a marketing department, so this is like a recently formed thing, but last year I was one of the Chairman's presenters.
Hi, I'm Sarah Heimlich. I have been involved in FIRST for over 15 years now, though I like to joke since I was negative 4 months old, so a bit longer than that in some capacity. I did FLL for a number of years and then a little bit of FRC before my family moved to Australia, and we founded 3132, the first FRC team in Australia. Was part of the team for a number of years, first as a student and a chairman's presenter and a bunch of other stuff. And then I became an alum and mentor on the team up until last year. So I was there for our Hall of Fame win in 2017. I now mentor 971 Spartan Robotics in California, and I'm the lead entrepreneurship mentor there. I've won some awards, and they're on the slide.
All right, what's up, guys? My name is Eric Klein. I am currently an alumni relations mentor for Team 2412, the Robototes out of Bellevue, Washington. I've been in FIRST for about 8 total years, 6 years as a student, 2 years as a mentor now. Outside of FLL on FRC on 2412, I was the team captain, the scouting lead, business lead, and I led our sales. As far as my experience with Chairman's, a little limited. I can talk to you guys, the teams out there that are just starting to get the Chairman's programs off the ground, because I was heavily involved with building 2412's first ever Chairman's presentation as I was graduating. And then outside of that, I have professional experience in sales, marketing, graphic design, the whole shebang. So if you guys have questions about general awards, talking to judges, making that perfect pitch, I can really help you out there.
All right, and then my name is Ellie Bear, and I will be your moderator today. I am a student on 1678, and I am 1678's chairman's lead. So I think we'll get started with a few questions for our panelists. How do you guys make sure that your whole team is ready to talk to judges at competition? Can start with anyone.
So one of the things that go ahead, Jessica.
Go ahead. Okay. So it's definitely very important to have the entire team involved in the chairman's process to some extent. I know for a lot of teams it can be a struggle to get some of the more robotics heavy team members involved in this. But it's definitely important to have everyone in the pit qualified to speak to a judge. And how we do this is we train students a little bit in public speaking. Some part of that is our outreach. At outreach events, it's a great way to practice talking to new people about first and about your team, because you'll be basically giving them the pitch that you would be giving the judges. We also have resources in our pit, which makes it easier for kids to talk to the judges. For example, we have posters up about our programs and outreach. We keep a packet of the judges packet in our pit so that if a judge asks a specific question, the students will be able to flip to resources to be able to answer that question. And we always make sure there's at least one person in the pit who is well versed on subjects that judges might ask about, so that if the student really doesn't know, they can direct the judge to someone who does know, because it's never a good idea to just say, I don't know, and then the judge walks away and miss that opportunity. You always want to direct the judge to someone who might know. Even if it makes you look a little bit less knowledgeable, the alternative is way worse.
So one of the things that we would always do on 3132, and we still do, is we have fun Fridays. So Friday night is our normal team meeting during off season. So everyone's there on Friday, even during build season, because that's when we normally meet in the off season. And we play games. So it would either be a potluck, everyone would bring something in, or eventually the parents started bringing in dinner, and we would all sit in the kitchen area and we would play trivia games. Jeopardy is a favorite of ours, so we would have a whole like Jeopardy board set up, and the students would pair off into teams, and they could bribe mentors to join their team. And then we would play a full game of Jeopardy, which is just a lot of fun, and it becomes an easy way for people to learn about it. And instead of it feeling like this chore and like, oh, you have to read all this stuff, or oh, you have to sit through this presentation, it becomes engaging and everyone wants to win, because oftentimes there'd even be a prize for winning.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add in a little bit. Something that we do on 2412, because it is so tough to try and get every single person on your team, especially for the bigger teams out there, to be well versed in everything about the robot and everything about your business plan and all that jazz. What we do is we try and pick like 3 to 6 of the biggest, most important parts of your team that year, and that's technical, that's business plan, that's outreach, that's chairman's, there's a whole shebang. You pick 3 to 6 of the most important things and make sure that every single member can talk about that at length. Why we do that is because when the judges come around, there's only so many awards they're asking questions for, and the questions are usually same from year to year, or at least very similar. And so when they ask a question about imagery and you've trained your team members to understand that your turret for that year is the most impressive part of your robot when it comes to imagery design or quality or whatever, then they're really knowledgeable on that subject and they can pivot that question towards the turret. If they ask about imagery and you've trained them on the business plan, they know a lot about the business plan and its imagery details, then they can pivot to that subject. And so picking 3 to 6 items and making sure they're really well trained on those items rather than the awards themselves allows them to talk at length about them.
Yeah, something that I would like to add, just as a team member and as someone who's presented for Engineering Inspiration for 4 years now, or 3 years, it would be 4 this year. Speaking from experience is always the best course of action. So even if your freshmen don't know about a summer camp that you ran on your team 5 years ago, if a judge comes up and says, tell me about your outreach, every single one of your team members should have been to an outreach event, and they can talk about their experience of that outreach event and how it changed them and how it changed the people that they were working with. And that's always something good to bring up.
Another question that kind of goes along with that is, how do you guys think is the best way to set up your pit to optimize presentations to judges? So I think that can be either like resources in your pit or specific like pit display items, other things like that.
I'll go ahead and start. So what our team has that I really, really love is we have a custom banner every year that we put outside of our pit. It's really, really nice. We order it from like banner.com or something, but we always put our leadership team as kind of in a leadership structure because judges typically ask about leadership. And then we put pictures from different outreach events so that when we're talking about our trip to China or a summer camp that we once ran, we can point to the pictures and judges can see us directly making an impact. And it's not just like, here's some words that explain, it's actual pictures. And that's always nice to have.
Also, another thing, like in addition to posters and anything else you might have, we have like a judging pamphlet, which is like a shortened version of our business plan. So in that, you'd have like the most important achievements that your team has done over the year, which for us, we also went to China and mentored and helped some teams there. So it's always important to include like a visual aspect as well.
So, coming from Australia to competitions in the US, we always had a little bit of a challenge on this one, right? Big banners and the like are hard to put on planes. And you don't want your crate to be overly heavy because then you have to pay for overage. So this is always a challenge for us. Our pits are functional. They are not beautiful. And I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, right, the pit is not just for judging, but it's also for your robot. And so you don't want to have something great and amazing and beautiful and crazy that's going to get in the way of your robot team and your pit crew being able to service the robot and get it out for your next match. So there is a balancing act to play here, and we definitely went with simple because we had to. But I think the most important thing in our pit was we would have 3 different things that we'd give, well, technically 4, we'd give to judges. We had our big books. They just stay in the pit. They're about yay big. And that's everything the team has ever done. Then we'd have the books we'd actually give to the judges, and there were 2 versions of that, one for outreach, one for robot, and they were yay thick, just, spiral bound. And then we'd also have a 1-pager. And so we would be talking to those and bringing up different pieces and elements of those as we were talking to the judges. So it was just something in our hands and the students' hands rather than, something big and flashy just because that wasn't practical for us.
Yeah, Sarah brought up a really good point about the pit, and there is a balancing act of like how do you go for like beauty at the same time remaining very functional. And I would say 2412 took a pretty different approach than Sarah did. We went all in on making our pit as presentable as possible. In our minds, the pit was our moneymaker, and so we didn't. Luckily we don't have to travel, and so our situations are a bit different, but we really focused on how can we make the experience for a judge coming into our pit as optimal as possible to show off like the very best of our team and exactly what we can do. So the pit is designed fully by students in CAD. We have the CAD model for the pit sitting in the very front of the pit. We also have our judges booklet, which is something similar to what you guys do, which is every single thing, those 6 items that I was talking about, is documented in there with pictures. So if the robot's not there, we can just flip to a page about our turret and show it off. We usually have backup pieces. If the turret breaks, we have a second turret we can pop on the robot. We keep that on hand so that way we can show that, hey, look what our turret looks like if it were on the robot. Another thing we do is we keep on strap one item that we have developed across the entire season. So something that went through at least 5 design iterations. So we show that off and say, look how we develop our robot throughout the season and not just sit with like the same design that we had at the beginning of the year. That and put someone at the front of your pit at all time. We usually have one salesperson that sits at the front, and their job is either talk to scouts or talk to judges. And they swap out, but those are the most knowledgeable persons on the team that can talk about everything to do with the team. And they kind of welcome the judge in and then, turn around and grab maybe the driver to come talk to the judge or something like that about specific engineering items.
Yeah, I just wanted to add real quick. For 1678, we just recently redid our pit display, and we've found it really, it's been a really good thing for us to have our CAD model. We just recently got like a pit display that's like more of a computer style thing, and having CAD models of all of our different mechanisms on that pit display has been really helpful for us in not only talking to judges, but also talking to other students from other teams who are interested in our robot, because then our robot does not have to be there at all times. And so if you are looking to explain something technical and you can't necessarily point to the robot directly, a CAD model has been super helpful for us. To move on to another question, what's the most important part of your pitch to a judge?
So I guess I'll get started on this one. I think that it really depends on your team. There is no one answer to this. It really depends on what your team's strengths are, and you want to highlight those. So oftentimes when we were putting together a submission, we would talk about numbers and statistics, but also stories. And so, it's great to have the big numbers, but not every team has them, and not every team needs them, to be really honest, to win Chairman's Award, especially with the new questions that have come out this year, which if you haven't seen, I highly encourage you to look at. And so, you want to, but if you have them, you want to say them, right? If you've reached 10 million people, you want to say that. If you've been to 120 countries, you want to say that. But you also don't want to lose the stories. And I'll give an example of this. The year we won Chairman's, we had a line in the presentation. It was from one of the students, and that year we'd done a lot of work with water safety charities, which is really important here in Australia. We're, an island nation, lots of water. And so one of the students on the chairman's presentation team was really passionate about this. And it turns out the reason she was so passionate about it is when she was 12, she'd saved her sister from a riptide. And that was what some of our work had focused on, was riptide safety. And so she told that story in the judging room. And later on, we were doing a chairman's panel similar to this, and there was one of the championship chairman's judges on the panel with us. And I told this story about how, we had this really powerful story from this girl. It was really great. And he said, hang on, I'm going to have to stop you there, Sarah. I was your chairman's judge, and a year later, I still remember that story. So never doubt the power of having a really important, impactful story in there. And that impact isn't just statistics. It can also be the individual stories.
Okay, I'm just gonna go now. So I think with this year's circumstances, focusing on just your writing supplements and video would probably be better than, because the pit for us is not really an option since I live in New York and competition is completely virtual this year. So I would just focus on the writing and video this year. But for the pit, I think just the energy of the whole team would probably be the most important thing to judges. When they see your team, they want to see that people are excited to be in robotics, that they have stories to tell, that their experience on the team really made them grow as a person. So our team did actually win Engineering Inspiration, and it was because we cheered every single time. We always have really good energy throughout the competition. And I also created a team model for our team. I think a team model is probably important as well, which shows how your team kind of represents the values of FIRST.
Yeah, something we've always talked about on 1678 in relation to talking to judges in the pit is that we always want to be talking about our future plans. Oh yeah, we've done this, but we also know that we're going to do this in the future, and we're always striving to do more. And I think that's really what we on 1678 have thought is our most important part of talking to judges. What strategies do you use to get information across to judges in the short amount of time you have?
I would say you got to have your ideas pre-prepared. You should know what you're going to talk about before the judge shows up. Every student should have those 6 ideas in their head, and have the booklet ready to go to show those off. That's the most effective way. You don't want to dilly-dally thinking about how does this question best fit our team. you should be comfortable with, what are they going to come up with and how are you going to best show off your team. Having those ideas in your head before they get to the pit is the best way to do it.
I think too, if you start with your most exciting outreach ventures, then the judges are more compelled to stay. So we typically start again with like trips to China and like really, really big outreach things. And then the judges will be like, oh, that's super cool. What else do you do? And then they'll keep asking, what else do you do? What else do you do? So as long as you stay interesting and you talk fast, then you should be able to get everything across.
Awesome. I think we're going to move on to a few more chairman-centered questions for a little bit. How does your team approach the written submission? So that would be the essay and executive summary. What are your strategies for like getting that started?
One strategy that my team has for approaching the essay is we separated our essay into the different topics that we wanted to talk about. So in our case, it was our programs and our different big outreach. And our goal was to get across the big message of our presentation, which is the impact that it made on the community and on the world, and get in all of the information that we can't fit into the presentation because there's not enough time in there. And although there is a word limit on the essay, you can get in a lot more facts and figures and statistics about your programs, like how many impressions they get on social media, how many people you've impacted, how many countries, how many counties in your area, that you wouldn't be able to get out in your presentation because there's just not enough time. And most importantly, you want to make it clear that the big picture impact that all of your programs combined are having on your community and on the world.
So I think there's a couple pieces to this one. The first one is the essay should not be thought of in isolation, right? It's a piece of a puzzle that is your submission. And this year with the new executive questions, those short answer questions, I'd really encourage teams to look at them earlier rather than later. They are very different than they have been in the past. I think there's like 5 questions that basically got smushed into one. There's 4 new questions that are totally different. And they've really gone from being centered around how has your team started other first teams and mentored them to being more about that overarching community global culture change. They're a really great opportunity, I think, just for even reflection. Even if your team isn't going to submit for chairman this year, even if you aren't registering this year, I think it's a really great way for you to look at your team holistically and figure out where are your strengths and where are your weaknesses. Having said that, going back to my point about it being a puzzle, I think you can't just think about the essay in isolation. You need to think about all of the pieces and what you're going to put where. I would reiterate what Jessica said. The essay is a really great place to put those statistics, those hard numbers. And I think the presentation is a much better place to put those stories because it's your one chance to look the judges in the eye. Does that mean that your presentation shouldn't have any statistics? No. Does that mean your essay shouldn't have any stories? No. It's a balancing act. And so you need to figure out how that whole puzzle comes together to form a cohesive story.
I think one of the benefits of having like a designated team of people for marketing and for writing is that they join a team because they love to write, and even though they might not have that much prior experience, we like to train our rookies by just giving them information from a business plan and like letting them view the prompts so that they can like get a feel of what needs to be answered. So then we create like a bunch of rough drafts and we just continue to condense down the information so that the statistics are like really clear and it just answers the question as best as possible, basically. So I think training your team not to just be like really robotics focused, but to also encourage them to express their anecdotes and ideas as best as possible is really important. So another aspect that we try to do is like talk to different departments, talk to different members of each department because they probably have different experiences. And then we try to incorporate that into our writing prompts as well, in addition to like facts and just future goals.
I think that kind of brings up another question for me, but how do each of your teams structure the people who work on your chairman's submission? Like, do you have your own like designated group of people that work on it? Is it kind of a conglomeration of people from across the team? How are you guys structuring that?
So 701 is a pretty medium to big size team with a very, very small operations team. And so the past couple of years, it's kind of been the same 3 or 4 people working on the chairman's essay. But we're trying to change that. You know, we're trying to make it more of a team effort because I think chairman's is a team award and it should be worked on by the entire team. But currently, we just have a small team of people working on it.
So I want to jump in here. I think there's a distinction between working on the submission and working on chairman's, right? So any outreach activity that your team does is a great way for your team to work on chairman's, and everyone should be involved with that. On 3132, at least, not everyone was directly involved with the submission process because they don't enjoy writing, they don't enjoy presenting, and that's okay. To be honest, we would normally have one student write it because we thought it was easiest to have one voice, and then a whole bunch of people would be in the editing process. So that was actually my sister, Jay. She has a number of presentations on chairman's. They're great. You should go watch them. But basically around Christmas, she would go into her room, a lot of Tim Tams and other treats would go in, and about a week later, a chairman's essay that was about 20,000 characters would come out. And then a whole lot of editing took it up to probably 40,000 characters, and then a whole lot more editing brought it down to 10,000. So that was kind of our process, a little different, it sounds like.
For my team, we have a dedicated chairman's team, which is 4 or 5 students and a couple of business-oriented mentors. But as both Sarahs were saying, definitely the whole team is involved in the editing process. We put it up on Slack, which is our main communications app, and it's on the shared drive for anyone to access so that anyone can pop in and make comments, and we highly encourage that because, once again, it is important to have everyone involved because it's the team's voice. But if you just leave it up for the whole team to do and no one takes charge, it will end up just not getting done. So I think it's important to have it, if you're really going for chairmans, to have a dedicated chairman's sub-team. And there's a balance to find definitely between getting things done and having the entire team, or as much of the team as you can, involved in it. And you need to find your team's balance for that.
I have a small note to add, but also give your essay to your English teachers. They are there for a reason, and even though they'll tell you to spell out STEM or FRC instead of using an acronym, you could ignore those, but they do a really great job at getting you to cut out irrelevant information and fixing your grammar. So that's something that we've also found useful.
Yeah, in the past, for our essay, we've sent, I know a few of you guys here, we've sent our essay to your teams, and we really think it's important to get feedback from as many people as possible. So we have like a deadline for our essay of Thanksgiving break, and then after Thanksgiving break, we are entirely editing our essay and sending it out to literally as many people, as many like friends on FRC teams, people's moms, like all over the place, to just get as many eyes to look over our essay and make sure that not only people inside FRC will be able to understand it, but also someone who has no experience whatsoever with FRC could understand what each of our programs are doing and why they're important. To move on to another question, what do judges look for in presenters? What do you think is like the most important qualities in chairman's presenters, and how does your team choose their presenters?
I'll start again. The biggest note that we've gotten from our team in a positive way is energy. When we won chairman's at Davis, after we were done presenting and answering questions before we left the room, the judges looked at us and they said, the one thing that we always look into in 701 and the one thing that we always notice is how excited and happy and energetic you are when you walk into the judges room. And so when you're choosing chairman's presenters, it's important to make sure that they want to do it and they would be excited when walking into that judges room, because it really does make a difference. If you're like dancing and cheering when you're walking, judges are going to be excited to see it. And then also for just choosing presenters, we just go with whoever worked most on the essay because they're typically the ones that have the most knowledge and can best the questions.
I agree that energy is a big part of being a good presenter, and I think something that goes with that is the chemistry of your team. You need to make sure that your presenters, this might seem obvious, but that they actually get along and that they like each other. Not even that, but some people can like each other and not necessarily have good chemistry when presenting. As Sarah said, our presenters were the one who worked the most on the essay, and someone who had worked on chairman's team very thoroughly the last year and also that year. But as well as that, we also had auditions for the last presenter slot, which is how I got onto the presentation team. So they just did auditions with the two people that they knew were going to be chairman's presenters, and a couple of mentors were judging. We ran through the year previous script and asked a couple of questions, and they were just looking for general speaking ability, so you don't stumble over your words too much, you don't like jump around a lot, you can clearly communicate your thoughts, and also, as I said before, the chemistry with the other presenters was very important.
Just like building off of that, I think that you shouldn't choose only seniors to present, even though they might have the most experience. Like, I was chosen because I did work on the essay, but there were also two other presenters, and one was from engineering and the other one was from programming, and one of them was a sophomore. So I think experience and presentation skills shouldn't completely just dominate who you choose to present. It should be a thing that people pass on throughout the years, because chairman's is like a long-term goal. It's definitely not something you can do in a year or two, because you need to build up a reservoir of achievements and goals to talk about. So that's what our team decides to focus on, which is just chairman's is like a long-term goal and to just keep working towards it.
Yeah, I think turnover is super important. Last year, on 1678, we actually had an entirely new presentation team because most of our presenters had graduated the year before, and it was a really big challenge for us figuring out how to do that turnover. So this year, even though we had some people who interviewed for presentation team that were really strong, we chose to go with someone who was actually a year younger, because we didn't want every single person on our presentation team to be the same age. And like, it sounds a little harsh like when I'm saying it, like, oh no, you can't be on presentation team because you're a year older than we think you should be. But our candidate was super strong, and she was like neck and neck with one other girl who was a junior, and she was a sophomore. And we actually ended up going with the sophomore because we want to make sure that when our current juniors graduate, we have people on the presentation team who know what's going on, because I think it's super important when you walk into the judging room that your presenters are confident and they know what's going on. And so having a bunch of brand new presenters can provide a really big challenge sometimes with that. So making sure that your turnover from year to year, you always have someone on the presentation team who has been in that room before is super important. What advice do you have for a team looking to expand their programs beyond their team?
So I gave a presentation about this at last Capital City Classic. I'd recommend going and watching that to get started. I guess TLDR version of it is figure out what makes your team excited. You know, I think we have this view of outreach that it's going and helping at a soup kitchen or doing presentations or going to China. And all of those things can be outreach, but none of those things have to be outreach. So figure out what your team is excited about and go do that. You know, the example I love to give of this is 125, who goes and they made blankets for their local dog shelter because they had some students who were really passionate about animals. Like, I think that's just a great example of taking something you're passionate about and turning it into an outreach project. So brainstorm, be creative.
If you're really looking to expand your programs and you're kind of wondering where to start, or you feel like you're stuck and you don't really know where to branch off to, a great resource is any connections that you have. So anyone in FIRST or outside of FIRST who you think would have connections to opportunities for new outreach or expanding your outreach. An example on Exploding Bacon is our Spark Kits, which are little shoebox-sized resource kits that we send to countries with less resources so their kids can learn science in schools. That program would be nothing without all of the connections that we have that helped us actually get those kids out there. And that ranged from teams, a China team who was traveling over here that we were able to give some kits to so they could take back to their country, to a kid who was going on a vacation to a different country, and we dropped off some kits with them before they left, and they were able to get those kids to that different country. So you can reach out on social media to people who might be able to help you, anyone that you've met at competitions. I would suggest starting there.
How do you balance robot building and other technical aspects with your outreach and Sherman's program?
I would say just to like highlight. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm not sure what the question was exactly, but I would just say that in every robotics team, there's always like a super big focus on STEM. So it's great that there's a marketing department or like a aspect to robotics as well. So outreach for us, we started by emailing a bunch of teams in our area, like middle schools, so we could start building a new team at one of the robotics teams. So I would just like look for a community or like a lack of community actually around your school. So in the Bronx, there's not a lot of opportunities for middle schoolers to get into robotics. So we started off by emailing a bunch of middle schoolers or like securing grants, and that's like a way you could build a team if there isn't a team there, or like you can search for teams in your local area and just start like building a relationship with them so you can mentor them as well.
One of the things I'm very passionate about as a mentor is that we don't want to just create the best engineers, but we are trying to create the next generation of the best possible citizens. And that's about so much more than just the STEM skills you're going to get in FIRST. You know, I have always done the outreach and awards. on my team. I've done some of the technical stuff as well, but from the time I was a freshman all the way through my mentoring career, that's what I've loved doing. But in the real world, I am a software engineer, and the skills that I have gained by doing chairman's and outreach are actually directly applicable still in my work. I still have to write design docs. I have to give presentations. I have to give presentations to customers and to my boss and to his boss. And so those skills are going to be so valuable to you. So if you are a student watching this and you want to go and be an engineer, I would highly encourage you to get involved in the outreach side of your team, because it's going to make you more hireable. It's going to make university easier. Every time there was a presentation at college, it was so easy comparably because I'd done it so many times. It's going to make you a better employee, and it's just going to help you be a more well-rounded individual, which is what companies are truly looking for. So I think that, just as you have to balance it in your work life, you also need to learn how to balance it in your first life, and it will make you a much more well-rounded individual.
Yeah, I mean, going to the question about how do you balance robotics versus awards or outreach or business is, Sarah has a great point that I really agree with, and I won't repeat it, but just robotics is not just about engineering. It's about developing yourself as a human. And, your mission statement most likely has something beyond just being good at STEM. It's probably something about, ours says producing workforce ready members is how we like to, phrase developing our students beyond just knowing what a RoboRio is. As far as, separating it, this sounds kind of weird because you don't always think you're doing it, but don't ostracize students that want to do non-robotics things. On our team, we prioritize in our marketing non-robotics related things. So when we produce a poster, it says at the very top, like art and design, graphic design, maybe it says business plan development, stuff like that. When we go talk to students in our school, we go to the DECA club. We go to, the history classroom, stuff like that. Everyone already knows that there's a robotics team and you can learn how to do robotics. It's if you want students that are going to do business and you want students that can help you with your graphic design, with your imagery, with things that aren't related to robotics, you need to go and talk to those students and really connect with them and show them that that robotics is for them. And then create teams for it. When you're trying to make sure that you're developing a business plan while also building your robot, it shouldn't be the same students doing everything. They can only focus on so much. There are students at the same time as them being members of your team. And so you need to make sure that you have people dedicated there that are they don't want to be engineers. They want to go into business when they go into college and into the field. And so they show up every day and they go into another room and they sit down at the computer with their team and they focus on the business plan. And, that's their job. And that's how you make sure that both things are getting done really, really well, rather than 50% on each.
It's definitely important to have dedicated sub-teams for each. I think it's equally important that those sub-teams communicate with each other, because at the end of the day, if your mechanical sub-team has no idea what your business sub-team is doing when they're holed up in that room writing grants, there's not going to be good communication on either side. And when you actually have to come together to do something that involves the whole team or something big like the chairman's award and the chairman's documents, you're kind of going to fall apart in that aspect. So it's great to have dedicated sub-teams so that more work gets done, but make sure that they communicate with each other and they're constantly updating each other on what the other is doing.
Yeah, I also think that the technical aspects and the chairman's aspects they're definitely not mutually exclusive. So just kind of making sure that on 1678, every single student on our team, no matter if they're on a sub team or a non-technical sub team, is required to do outreach, to go to a certain number of outreach events every year, because we want every single one of our students to understand that this team is about more than the robot. And because of the outreach and things like that, our team can get so much farther than if it was just a bunch of high schoolers sitting in a room building a robot. And so I think it also, by making sure that all students are kind of understanding and having a part in our outreach, it makes it feel a lot more like a team effort. Like if we win an award, it feels a lot more like our whole team is celebrating together because we all know that we put effort into it, rather than like, oh, these like 10 kids that are on the chairman's sub team are celebrating when we win a chairman's award. It's like more of a whole team, like cohesive feeling like that, which I think is really helpful and really important. If we want to move on to another question, this kind of moves on from the last question, but how do you create a team culture that supports your chairmans and outreach programs?
I think that by kind of like 1678, we do require everyone to have a certain number of outreach hours and attend a certain number of outreach events every year. And just by doing that, every student is involved, even in some tiny way, in outreach, and they develop an appreciation for the outreach work that we do. So even if they can't, like, if they don't like writing and they don't want to sit down at a computer for 4 hours every day typing an essay about our team, they understand the work that we're doing. And again, they can talk to judges about it and they have a part of it. So when we win Engineering Inspiration, and in the little blurb before the award, the judges say something like, they hosted this many DEX events, that student can sit there and was like, hey, I volunteered at that event. I was a part of this. And just by little things like that, you begin to develop an appreciation for it.
I
It's a little
agree.
different on 3132. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
Sorry, I agree with what Sarah said, and I think a big part of that understanding is respect. They need to respect the work that goes into the chairman's program, and they can't just say, oh, these students, this might not be a problem on a lot of teams, but I know on some teams it is, where the robotics team kind of doesn't take the chairman's sub team seriously because they think it's just a bunch of essay writing and those kids don't work on the robot anyway. They need to realize that it is actually a big deal and it is something that needs an equal amount of effort going into it.
So I'm gonna champion this one for all the rookies out there. It's really hard to change culture, right? It's really, really hard if you don't start there. And 3132 is in the unique position of we had to care about chairmans, and not for the award, but because when we started, we were the only FRC team on the continent, and there were only 20 FLL teams. That is not sustainable. Like, we didn't have a sponsor base, we didn't have a stream of students coming in, that none of that existed. So simply to ensure our own survival, we had to start looking at all the things that, as it turns out, feed directly into things like the Chairman's Award and Engineering Inspiration and entrepreneurship. And so I think that if you're a rookie, you have an amazing opportunity to not have to have this conversation and to not worry about this because you can just do it from the very beginning. I know one of the things that was really important for us was our mission statement. And if you talk to 1816, or if you go and watch some of the presentations they've done, I know mission statement was also crucial for them in their journey to the Hall of Fame. So 3132 is a STEM for everyone, everywhere. And it's always been that. And that's truly what the team is about, is bringing STEM to everyone, be it on our team or be it around the world. So I'd really encourage you to come up with that mission statement and stick to it.
Awesome. I think we're going to move on to taking a few questions from the chat. So if you're watching right now and you have any questions you'd like to ask our panelists, please put them in the chat. I see a few in there already. So from Elijah, do you think it's a better idea to have everyone in the team work on the essay, or do you feel a select group should only be able to work on it?
I think we sort of covered this earlier, but I think the general consensus is that everyone should read the essay and maybe everyone should edit the essay, but only a select group of people should write the essay. Otherwise, it does sound like 30 people have written this essay, and it's not one cohesive voice. I think was the general consensus.
Yeah, also kind of a case of like too many cooks in the kitchen. I think it's hard to get an undertaking like that's done if you're doing it in a bunch of tiny little chunks with a bunch of different people doing each of those chunks. So I think kind of to like streamline the process a little bit, it's probably best to have fewer people working on it. Another question from Shoshana. What are your thoughts on having your presentation reflect the theme of this year's game?
I love it so much. I think that dressing up as astronauts or like Mario characters may be a little bit much, but we typically on our team go for a more formal presentation, but we put in like space puns or Star Wars puns or like video games puns throughout the thing to try to keep it light and a little bit funny. And it just makes you more excited every time you like say that pun. You're like, oh, this is funny. And it's just something to lighten it up a little bit.
I think this really depends on your team and what you're comfortable with. Like for some, there are teams that just looking in the Hall of Fame group, right? Mars always would get dressed up in like suits. I know other teams in the Hall of Fame that have done skits like 27. Our team fell somewhere in the middle of those, I think. We would go in just team shirts and talk. And we weren't really doing a theme. Our theme was STEM for everyone, everywhere, which is also the mission statement. So that was what we were trying to thread through it. But I know a lot of teams have been really successful by having a more fun theme like that game, or I don't know. There's lots of examples out there that you can look to.
Eric, did you have something?
Yeah, I was worried my mic might have been messed up. So my thought on theme in general for presentation as well as the whole team is, well, first of all, it should be up to the individual team. If it's something you guys really want to do, I'd say absolutely go for it. It's a conversation you should have though, because at least from what I've seen, if you go with branding your team year after year to the year's theme, it becomes hard to have consistent branding and be identifiable. If your pit changes every year to the theme, that's going to be a lot of work and a lot of effort, and that's totally cool. That's something you want to do, but do recognize that there are drop-offs in professionalism and consistency when you do stick to those themes. As far as the presentation in general, I agree with Sarah. I think it's totally cool to throw in, puns, or, have your, if we do like trifold boards or something like that, have those boards be, space themed or whatever. But, try and keep the uniforms what you guys would wear during a normal year. And, the presentation should be about your team, not about the theme. The theme is just there to help help everyone have fun. It's not what the robotics is about. So, don't get caught up on it. Totally have fun with it.
I'd like to jump in on this subject. I am completely down for integrating the theme into your presentation. I think it's a really fun way to bring energy into the room, which is something we talked about earlier. However, I do think there's a danger in overdoing it. So definitely keep in mind that the theme, if you are adding a theme, it's not your entire presentation. Like Eric said, that should be focused on your team and your programs. The theme should be used if it can enhance your presentation. So an example would be our presentation last year. We had it space themed. Each of our programs was like a little space station on a planet that represented our team, and we had a cool graphic at the very end where all of the teams that we had helped out looked like stars in the background, which made a really big impact as a kind of big punch closing statement. And it's an example of something that really enhanced the presentation and did not in any way completely overtake the message of the presentation. So that's one example of how you could use the theme.
Yeah, I've also seen in 2019, I know there was the like Star Wars Force for Change initiative thing. And I saw a few teams, actually including our team, kind of integrate that into their submission and talk about it as something that like, oh, this is like what FIRST is pushing right now. So maybe we'll try to incorporate that. So we like incorporated the phrase like being a force for change in a bunch of different places throughout our presentation. So maybe if you like look a little deeper just from like the surface level like aesthetics of the theme and see like what something you can do kind of a little bit deeper with the theme, I think would be another interesting way to incorporate that. It doesn't look like we have any more questions from the chat. And so I think it is about time for us to wrap up. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. You guys brought some really great perspectives. We really enjoyed this. Thank you to everyone who was watching. Thank you to the people who sent in questions. This was a really great panel. It was lovely seeing you all. Thank you for being here. And I think we're wrapped up now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Girls in Leadership panel. I'm really excited to introduce our speakers today. We have some fantastic girls in STEM here to present about what they've learned and their positions in leadership. So whenever you guys are ready, let's take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice Vandervoort, and I'm the Team 1403 co-captain. So before we start, I want to give a little bit of info about, just a little bit about me in case you guys want context for the questions we'll ask later in the panel. But here we go. All right, so for context, I'm a senior and I'm from New Jersey, all the way on the East Coast, and I will be majoring in bioinformatics and computational biology next year. So when I'm not doing robotics and running around like a chicken with his head cut off, I tend to like reading books from the 70s and teaching my rabbit new tricks. His name's Ezekiel. All right, so obviously books and rabbits aren't exactly what we're here to talk about. So in terms of leadership experience and context, I've been on my robotics team for 4 years now, and I've had 2 positions in that time. My junior year, I was robot manager, and a lot of that leadership experience came with learning to trust myself and having both creativity and responsibility. And so I did a lot of keeping the building process on track, scheduling, organizing, also assuring quality control. So, a little bit of error here or there on a bot can end up costing you a game. So, every single drawing, every part, that would go through me, and that would always allow a certain level of quality in order to keep our subsystems in check. I also developed a new prototyping process along with some other admin in order to have a more data-driven prototyping process. So in that case, what that would entail is using the data from various different tests in order to make our design decisions and make sure that what we learned from the prototyping process got translated all the way into the season. Now, my second year, my experience lent more towards being team captain, which is quite a big responsibility, which I'm happy to share with my co-captain Nidhi, because our team is rather large at nearly 100 folks. So part of my team captain responsibilities was adapting to the whole COVID-19 fiasco. So we have a new safety sub-team, which helps us a lot with that. It has a lot of more protocols for keeping our team safe, and just in general, making sure that we have the structure we require. It also had a increased focus on sustainability. A lot of teams, I think, realized how precarious our situation can be in the case of some kind of pandemic or, a large issue. And so in the face of that and with that realization, I helped develop a team and a CAM curriculum system, which allows us to standardize everything we've got there. Again, it's a lot of servant-based leadership, the idea that you're leaving a legacy for those after you and making sure that you keep care and protection for the team as a whole. We also tried to make more team unity. So what that meant was creating a first-year mentorship program for our first-year students. We call it the Big Cougar, Little Cougar program, and it allows a lot of younger kids to find their way both like socially and knowledge-wise in what is a very big team. So aside from just robotics experience, other STEM leadership experience I have is that I've managed a social media feed for Education First during their technology summit. So I would manage a lot of the content and interview a lot of the different panelists at that particular event. And I think that leadership experience mainly gave me a lot of understanding of what it means to represent a brand, and also what it means to have a lot of responsibility and expectations. And I think that young women often struggle with that, and being able to have an experience where responsibility was placed and where you had to really trust yourself and, make split-second decisions was useful in what I was able to grow into later on. The next internship that I worked with was a microbiology internship up at Smith College in Massachusetts, where I would help a professor analyze and identify soil bacteria for their antibiotic properties. So in there, I was using a lot of stuff that I just didn't know how to use. To give you guys context, I'm a mechanical kid, so I would be working with metal, with screws. I really didn't know that much about biology until I got there. And so what I realized was that I could still use a lot of the skills that I learned in mech with biology, with this new machinery, with all of this new information that's just kind of piling in. And so I think the main takeaway from that is that the leadership skills that you have and the general knowledge skills you have from one place can translate into a whole other field. So if you're looking at being able to make that kind of translation and want advice, feel free to ask questions later on in the panel. And then finally, in terms of other STEM leadership experience, this past summer, I took on an internship at our very own New Jersey Institute of Technology. And so I studied neurofuzzy AI, which is pretty much like regular AI, except instead of using binary logic, where you'd have like a statement and true would be 1 and false would be 0, you have multiple degrees of truth. Basically, you can handle a lot of vague information. But I studied how it was applied to cybersecurity, and again, it was something that I didn't really have a lot of background on, but being able to move from one field to the other ended up allowing myself to grow as a leader in both of the fields. So later on this year, I'm really hoping to be able to code my own network, so I'm really excited for that. All right, so this isn't just about leadership, right? We're also here to talk about being a woman specifically in leadership. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about that from the lens of 1403, because we've redoubled our commitment to helping young women cultivate a lot of the tech and a lot of the leadership skills they're going to need to succeed. So we did this through 2 new initiatives that we started this year. One, our Women in STEM freshman orientation. So for this event, we have all of the freshman women in our school come in, sorry, not all the freshman women, but all the freshman women who want to sign up, come in, talk to a lot of our robotics captains, and, just be walked through what it's like to be pursuing STEM throughout high school. So, opportunities, clubs, and they could pretty much ask any kind of question. A little bit similar to this panel. Then we also have what I'm really, really excited for, which is our Women's Technical Nights. And what these are is a series of 5 different nights, bi-weekly pretty much. And for 2 hours, a female captain in a particular discipline will teach about her field. And so our main goal here was not only to create, female-centered unity, but also to be able to address that gap of knowledge that we realized a lot of young women had, because a lot of young men come into a team where almost everyone looks like them. And so it's really easy for them to find a mentor who can teach them a lot of stuff rapidly. And meanwhile, getting that same mentorship ability is a little harder for women. And so what we wanted to do was to address that by allowing them to learn skills, anything from, programming to CAD, electrical skills, and basic power tools. So if you guys have any questions about what it's like to foster that kind of environment, want advice on how to foster that environment on your own team, anything like that, that's also questions that I'd be really happy to answer later on in the panel. All right, so next is my awesome co-captain, Nidhi Murthy.
Hi everyone. So as Alice said, my name is Nidhi Murthy and I'm also a senior at Montgomery High School in New Jersey. And I'm the co-captain, along with Alice, of Team 1403 Cougar Robotics. So I wanted to start off with my leadership experience on Team 1403. But before that, I wanted to say that I never imagined that I would go into robotics, being that I was always interested in business. But as our corporate world is becoming more and more digitized, I decided to do something different and join the team. So I joined the business communications sub-team of our team in my sophomore year. And I was immediately interested and got firsthand experience in working on business plans, managing websites, social media, and more. So in my junior year, I also took on a managerial role as Alice did. And as Alice mentioned, she was the robot manager, which covered 1/2 of our team. And I was a logistics manager, which covered the second half. Here I had a lot more responsibility and had to deal with a good amount of challenges. But I focused on my work, overseeing the team, the logistics side of the team, and my own responsibilities, and I was able to combat them. One of my main responsibilities was chairman's, and such as organizing the essay, presentation, binder, and video. I also organized documentation and standards throughout the entire season from all of the sub-teams. Due to my huge increase in responsibilities I took on as a manager, especially in chairman's, I had many stressful moments. Yet my team became my family, and the amount I learned content-wise and also as a person, responsibility-wise and leadership skills made it all worth it and caused me to apply for team captain this year. So as team captain, my responsibilities increased even more as I currently oversee the 100+ person team along with Alice. As Alice mentioned, we've introduced multiple programs and have presented at many occasions in the past couple months. Throughout my past 3 years on the team, I like to believe that I have experienced a sense of corporate life and responsibility. In fact, one of our mentors always says that our team operates as a small business with no revenue. In addition to being a member of FRC, I mentor 2 FLL teams. It has been a fulfilling experience helping these students throughout their endeavors on their teams and fostering learning and a passion for STEM. At their Boroblast competition, I was honored to receive the Outstanding Youth Mentor Award. Outside of the team, I continued my learning of business and technology through an entrepreneurship and AI internship. Here I learned a lot of teamwork skills as I developed a detailed business plan for a prospective travel app. In addition, I learned even more about responsibility from the work I had to do for the company, such as researching and generating content regarding startup analysis, and I was honored to receive a presidential award for doing so. Throughout my experiences working in a team environment and as a leader, I have faced obstacles like anyone could imagine, and including those of being a woman in a field where they're, again, as Alice mentioned, male-dominated. However, I believe strongly that if you have a true passion and an interest is instilled, it is worth dealing with and getting past those obstacles, and I strive to continue to do so. So speaking of instilling this passion in women, we on Team 1403 believe that this passion needs to be instilled from a young age through our FLL programs and also as high school students. So for the past 3 years, we have been running a Women in STEM panel event, and we've done around 5 events at our kickoff and at our Montgomery district event. Here we have professionals from multiple STEM fields come and speak to our students and students from many FRC teams about their experiences and their journeys. We hope to inspire young female students by showing them the wide variety of opportunities a STEM career has to offer, and again, as I mentioned before, instilling that if they have a passion, they should continue through with it and not be overwhelmed by how the fields can be male-dominated.
All right. Hi, everyone. How's it going? My name is Shweta. I am a mechanical design lead on FRC 2135. So, a little bit about my team. We're called Presentation Invasion. We're from Presentation High School in San Jose, California. It's an all-girls school and an all-girls team, so I might have a slightly different perspective on what it's like as a leader. So, feel free to ask me about that. Another thing about our team is that we're very focused on student-driven leadership. We have great mentors for, guidance and safety and other things, but many of the day-to-day decisions and activities are run by students, which makes sense because it's kind of part of our mission to create a space for girls in leadership. So like I mentioned, I'm a mechanical design lead. So I'll talk a little bit about my responsibilities there. In general, on the team, I help run team meetings and activities. I help make decisions about, everything from logistics to team goals. We work together as a leadership team from all different sub-teams to kind of come together and make these decisions. And also sometimes I get to represent the team at outreach or publicity events. And as a design lead specifically, we usually have the leads work with newer members of the sub team to kind of teach them and guide them throughout the season. So that would be one of my responsibilities as well. So now for team experience, first of all, I'm a junior, so this is my third year on the team. Freshman year, I worked in manufacturing since that's where we usually have all our new members start off to gain some experience. I helped run our new CNC mill for a while, and the rest of the season, I basically just generally helped with prototyping and fabrication and assembly of the robot. And then in sophomore year, I got to specialize in mechanical design. I helped design the drivetrain, and I basically spent the rest of the season, so most of my time, designing and running tests on the shooter mechanism for our robot. And along the way, I got a lot of opportunities to work with newer members. I also helped a little bit with the tool certification process that we do in the beginning of the year. So I kind of helped train newer members on that. And basically, I just spent a lot of time at robotics last year. Now, in terms of competition experience, last year I got to help a few new members with the pit scouting process. For most of the competitions I've been to, I've basically worked with scouting and in the pits. And then our last off-season competition, which was almost exactly a year ago, actually, I got to be human player, which is a great experience, a really good learning experience. And I was supposed to be human player at our regional competition for 2020, which unfortunately didn't happen. But yeah, so some other activities, some other things I do. I've been volunteering with WRRF a lot recently. If you don't know, it stands for Western Regional Robotics Forum. It's an organization that runs a lot of FIRST and robotics related workshop series and events and things like that. So I've been on the planning committee for the fall and upcoming winter workshops, and that's how I spent a lot of my summer and even some of the spring. I run their social media, and I basically, the bulk of my work is in coordinating presenters and sessions. I also gave an intro to design workshop at the fall one, and I also was a part of the planning group for Cal Games this year, which is run by WRF as well. That's an off-season competition that they converted into a kind of virtual awards event for this year. And at school, I am the communications director for our Women in Computer Science Club, so that kind of fits with our theme here. I think it's really important as a girls' school to encourage more girls in STEM. So I joined that, and I wanted to kind of have more of a leadership role there. So basically, I am in charge of communicating with the students of the club and kind of being the link between our leadership and the members of the club. And I also do speech and debate. There's a picture of me looking really serious giving a speech. That's just something fun that I do that's helped me a lot with, public speaking. I'm also production captain for my Bollywood dance team at school, which is a different type of leadership, but equally fun. So yeah, that's me. I'll pass it on to Cassie now.
Hello, my name's Cassie, or Cassandra, and so I'm on FRC team 4575, the Tinmans, from just outside the Philadelphia area, not quite in the actual county itself, but it's in the Pennsylvania area. But the way I got started in robotics actually was through First Lego League. So in 2015, I went to an open house at my robotics team. And I was the age for FLL. I was in 5th grade. So I started FLL, and I loved it. I got to build things, and I was one of the people that got to stand at the table and push the buttons and make the robot go. So that was the coolest thing in the world to me. It was great. And I loved it. And actually, the head coach of the high school team, of the FRC team, was like, hey, this kid is doing pretty well in FLL. Let's see if they want to do FRC. And obviously I was like, oh my god, I get to use a drill. Like, this is gonna be the coolest thing in the world. So of course I said yes. Then they learned I was in 5th grade, but that's okay. So I started in FRC also in 2015 on 4575 of the Tin Mints. And we are actually a Girl Scout team. So we're a community team. So we take kids from all over the area. We have people from New Jersey that come to our team meetings sometimes. So it's really interesting to get a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ideas from people, and you don't just see the people every day at school. So that's really exciting. And another interesting thing about my team is that you've heard from a team of 100 people, which is literally the largest team that I have ever heard of. And you've heard from, a medium-sized team. My team has 8 people on it. Some of you guys might be saying, how do they do anything? Oh my god. And some of you guys are like, how do I get 8 people? I have like 3 people on my team. Whoever you are, I can probably answer a lot of your questions when we get to that part. But my team has done a lot of really cool things, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But after I started first robotics competition, I actually started mentoring the next year. So I loved FLL. Favorite thing in the world. Great. But then I wanted to mentor the kids. I wanted to show them how to program, like how to actually use a color sensor and make a line follower. So I've mentored 12 First LEGO League teams. It's one of my favorite things to do. So that would be FLL and FLL junior teams, or currently now it's First LEGO League Challenge, Explore, and Discover. So I've mentored all of them. And it's one of my favorite things to do actually in robotics. Then in 2017, I became the driver. So that means, I get to drive the robot. I have, head coach, the human player, the operator. I'm on the drive team. I get to drive around the robot. A ton of fun. But I wanted to do more on the team. More than just drive the robot. I wanted to lead the team. So I asked if I could be captain. And then the next year, I became the captain of my robotics team. So I became the captain of my robotics team, helped my team end up winning chairmans and EI and really cool awards and fun things like that. But also ran an event called Robot Stock. And some of you guys might have not heard of it before, but if you're from FMA, which is First Mid-Atlantic, which is the district I'm in, you've probably heard of it. Robot Stock was an event that introduced 4,000 people to First Robotics. And this is something that a team of 8 people ran. And it was all led by girls. It was a female-led event with 8 people on our team and a bunch of super awesome mentors. So one thing I really do want to get across is that it doesn't matter how many people you have. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter what gender they are, or really anything about that at all. As long as they're super motivated and dedicated and they want to do cool stuff, you guys can do it. I know that might sound really hard to do it with just a few people, but it's one of the things I really want to get across. But yeah, that's everything that I have. And back over to you, Allie.
Yeah, thank you so much. So these are our amazing panelists. So they have talked a great deal about their own experiences, and I think that everybody here can learn a lot from them. Right now, I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you have anything that you want to ask these amazing leaders, please put them in the chat, and I will read them off to you. Right now, we have some team Instagrams and contact information if you want to get in touch with any of these people. For now, though, I do have some questions of my own, if you don't mind me asking. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat so I can read them. But to all of you, what are the challenges of being a female lead on your team?
Well, I would say one thing, especially since I'm from an all-girls team, it's kind of expected that the team captain would be a female. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the other teams expect that as well. So one thing, especially as the driver on my team, I'm the one that makes the scouting plans or the plans for the matches and things like that. And so the other teams don't necessarily want to hear what you have to say about what your robot does. So while it might not be as hard to be a leader on my team personally, interacting with other teams and maybe being shorter than them, or just being a female, or being younger than them, you have to learn a lot of confidence. And by having that confidence, people are just like, yes, she is right. She knows what she's doing, even if I don't understand what she's talking about. She's got a lot of confidence. She can do it.
I think Nidhi and I have an completely different experience. We come from a very large and co-ed team, so in general, I think the number one difficulty of being on a team where, in your specific sub team of say 10 to 14 people, you might be the only female, is initially loneliness. Which probably sounds really funny because you'd think like, oh, there must be some kind of like tragic discrimination story or something, but no, not really. The one thing is, oftentimes there's not a female captain to look up to, or there's a group of friends where like all the guys have known each other since like fourth grade and they all decided they wanted to do robotics together, and you're the only person from your friend group to have decided to do robotics, and no one. And so I think one of the main things for keeping women in robotics and for facing that challenge, especially when you're dealing with co-ed teams, is that you need to have that camaraderie amongst women, and you need to have camaraderie for the entire team. That way, no matter where someone comes from in life, they can still really feel like they're part of something. And once they feel like they're part of something, all of their talents come shining out. And I think, inclusivity leads to the best ideas and to the best bod.
Yeah, I agree with what Alice said completely. And I also, as I mentioned before, I think that our team really values like being like really truly passionate and working really hard. So that's kind of what we want to do throughout all the things, like all the different programs that we introduce, like the tech nights and things like that. We just really try to instill that passion, because like being on like alone on your sub team, that kind of loneliness could cause you to kind of like not really develop that interest. So that's kind of what our main push is. And I think when you have it, you can get past your obstacles and get to your position.
Yeah, for me, I would say, being on an all-girls team, obviously I don't really have to deal with that kind of loneliness of being the only female leader. But and I haven't really had any negative experiences with that at all yet. But at the same time, like there's always a little apprehension that I have, like of what my future will be like when I'm out of this girls' environment. Am I going to have to face these experiences when I'm in college or in the workplace? How is leadership going to be different for me, and am I ready to face that? So I think those thoughts are always there. But my strategy to go about that right now is to just kind of focus on building basic leadership skills, building the basic confidence that you need to be a leader. Just focus on doing what I love, which is building robots, and just try to keep going with it, carry that on to my future in whatever way. And, we'll see what changes the future has. Right now, I'm just trying to focus on my team and building the skills that I have right now, and hopefully apply that later in life.
That's great. Thank you. Speaking of building skills and confidence, we have a question in the chat asking about tips for gaining more self-confidence.
So actually, what helped with me, my robotics team does a ton of outreach. And basically what they did was they brought me to an outreach event and kind of just shoved me out there and said, hey, explain what we do, just kind of go for it. And I'm like, I don't know any of these people. You want me to just talk to them? They're like, yeah, just, we believe in you. We're back here if you need us. So I just kind of had to talk to random people. I'm like, hey, look, we built robots. And they were so nice. Oh my goodness. People at outreach events are the nicest people in the world. And so honestly, just talking to random people about what we do and saying, it's kind of just like saying how awesome our team was really helped me a lot. That led to me doing a lot of judging practice and talking to judges, which helped my self-confidence and helped me do judging better. Helps me do panels better and things like that. So definitely just kind of talk to random people you don't know. That might sound really weird, but that's what helped me.
Personally, I'd say self-market. I know it sounds a little strange, especially you think, oh, well, you're putting the cart before the horse, right? Like first you get the confidence and then you market yourself. But honestly, I think the best way to approach it is the other way around. Because when you have to start thinking of yourself as, this person of some set of experiences, of some set of skills, you have to convince other people, like, hey, all of my experiences, all of what I've done, and all of who I am is perfect for your internship or perfect for your leadership position or that kind of thing. Once you start seeing yourself through those eyes, you're able to get more confidence in yourself. And so, I think it's like an old adage to be like, fake it till you make it, but act like you've got it already, like you've got that confidence, that you're like this perfect person. Act like that. See yourself through that lens, and you might not feel at the moment, and you might feel like an imposter for a little bit, but soon you'll be able to develop your own confidence in the stuff you're saying. So don't think it first and then say it, and eventually you'll think it.
I would say that. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. I would say one thing. I would probably want to tell my past self a little bit is that you don't really need to be in everything to prove that you deserve a spot on the team. I think one of the most important things that I have to learn was to speak even if I was unsure. Sometimes mentors or leaders or something would ask me a question, and I was always searching for the perfect answer in my head, and sometimes I would just kind of pause there and not answer the question. And that kind of came in between my ability to communicate my ideas. And I knew that I really had to that if I wanted to take on a leadership role. So I would just say, even if you make mistakes are not super knowledge specific concept, you still deserve to be heard, and you should know your worth. And I think that help you a lot when you're thinking about self-confidence.
Yeah, I think I agree with what everyone has said. And I think that for me, that was definitely an issue because we do have a really, really big team. And I was kind of shy in the beginning because I didn't really know anyone. But I think you just really need to talk to others about things, even if you, as Shweta said, even if you don't know exactly what exactly the entire thing, just still start talking and communicate and develop those connections, and then your confidence will start improving over time.
Thank you so much for that great advice, and thank you so much for you audience members asking that question. I would also like to ask, how can others inspire other females to become leads on their team?
Honestly, what I would say is that almost everyone is going to want the chance. They're just not gonna be sure if they're worthy of it. So if you want to inspire the other women on your team, arm them with the skills they'll need to do leadership. So, they might be like, oh, well, I've got these great ideas, but I don't think, I have enough mech skills to lead the mechanical team or something like that. And so I think being able to have those concrete skills, making sure that they don't feel like, oh, I'm a leader, but I don't know enough of the technical knowledge to be a leader. And making sure they don't have to deal with that imposter syndrome is probably one of the best things you can do to make sure that not only do they take the chance and apply for leadership and try to become that student leader, but that they can actually thrive there, and by thriving there, show that it's possible for all of the girls that come after them.
Yeah, I mean, like, that was definitely one of the greatest answers I've heard to a question. But another thing that I usually think of is that maybe they don't know what being a leader can be like. Like, what are the opportunities as being a leader? So one of the things that I would say is just, it's one of those things where it's like lead by example. Show them how fun it is to be the leader, and how, show them that you're just like a nice, normal person. Another thing is, but just show them what they can be. And as Alice said, show them what they already have inside of them to be the leader. Give them that confidence. Give them those, skills that you're going to need as a leader. And they're going to want to be like you. You're going to be their role model, and they're going to just want to be a leader like you.
Yeah, I would. That's a good answer. I would also add that there is definitely of having the skills that you need to before taking on the leadership position. I also think that a really big part of leadership is just a basic willingness to learn and be receptive to criticism and new knowledge at all times. So I think just make it clear to people who are maybe pursuing leadership that, again, they don't have to be perfect, they don't have to know everything. As long as you have a commitment to learning, then they're still worthy of a spot on leadership. They still have things that they can contribute.
I think that they all three of them really nailed it with all of those answers. And I think that for me, it was like having those kind of role models as like upperclassmen in leadership roles, and like their kind of advice and stuff really helped me to feel more comfortable to apply and become a leader. So I would definitely agree with everything they said.
That's great advice. Thank you guys. In terms of developing like the skills that you have and the technical skills that you were suggesting to inspire in other people around you, what resources do you use to develop those skills?
I would say one, anytime the resource can be a person instead of a book, you're going to learn so much more. And I think that's one of the nice things about FRC is that you've got a bunch of people that are, in the best way possible robotics nerds. And they're going to be so happy to talk to you about your specific or their specific sub-team, their specific area of expertise. So, if you want to talk to people in pits about what they do, or go to a workshop where someone who's maybe been doing like Swerve for 2 years is going to explain the whole thing to you. Always you'll be able to learn so much more from a person who's telling you things, and someone who's willing to mentor you and let you ask those questions that, experienced people don't always realize the gaps in your knowledge. And so someone who's willing to let you ask the not so stupid questions was such an amazing experience. If you don't have that, YouTube videos are probably the next best thing. There's all of those playlists full of CAD lessons and basic machinery tutorials, all of that. And then finally, you know, if you've got some papers, I know the Compass Alliance has some resources it's working on, and then there's a whole lot of stuff online by a variety of different teams that are really happy to share their knowledge. Any of those, and probably in that order, would be a really awesome opportunity for you.
Yeah, so I definitely agree that people are the best resource because you can just, as soon as you have a question, you can just ask it and they'll answer. If you don't have a person like in your immediate area that you can ask a question to, another great thing is the internet, and not just looking things up, like going out and finding real people who would know the answer. So I don't know if all of you know about this, but Chief Delphi is a website that's specifically for FIRST Robotics, but there's some super awesome people on there who can answer all your questions, and even things that have nothing to do with robotics. Trust me, they're nerds. They like talking about what they do. So definitely I would say talk to real people. They answer your questions the best. And it's not super complicated to talk to them. You know, you don't have to learn all this crazy vocabulary that's in some website that you found that you have no idea what it means.
Great. Okay. I do have some more questions for you guys. I would like to say though that we will probably wrap up around 4:50-ish, 4:55-ish. So we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat now. That would be great so that we can answer them before we run out of time. Another question for you guys would be, what skills would you suggest a younger woman in STEM to learn?
Number one, I would say the skill to be like, you know, I am speaking. I already know that. I will not like tolerate being spoken to this way. That kind of thing. I think there's oftentimes difficulty with, you know, being firm with someone, because you always really, 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 really want to be the nice person. But you can be the nice person while also respecting yourself and setting boundaries. So I think in terms of soft skills, that's the one that people tend to neglect and which could really benefit from learning on early in life. And then in terms of more like hard skills, I'd say learn to do anything that you can on a computer because, you know, mech skills are really awesome, but you might only be able to do them in a workshop, right? Electrical skills are really awesome, but electrical equipment is really expensive. But stuff like Prog, to some extent CAD, you can do them anywhere, you can practice them anywhere. And so I think a lot of women, you realize, and what I wish I could tell my past self is, you know, like as you grow older, no matter what you're studying right now, being able to have something that you can practice all the time in which you can apply to a lot of different fields, to a lot of different opportunities is always nice to have in the back of your pocket. So even if you're, you know, on a mech team, on an electrical team, you know, or even on something more like a business team, always have a technical computer, pretty much, I guess, for lack of a better word, portable skill in your back pocket because your future self might thank you later when that opens a lot of doors for you.
Yeah, so I would definitely agree with pretty much exactly what Alice said. Especially the knowing your like self-worth and having self-confidence and being like, no, I'm not going to let you interrupt me. I'm kind of in the middle of talking. Hold on. Just being able to do something like that is super valuable, not only in, you know, the robotics world, but also in you know, the workplace and things like that. But another thing I would say is, in terms of skills, try a little bit of everything on your team. Try a little bit of programming. Try some mechanical. Do some business. trust me, I'm not a huge fan of writing essays, but just try a little bit of it and see if you really like it, and then try and learn the skills that'll help you maybe help some people that are in that. Even if you're not in, say you're in the mechanical sub team and you try a little bit of electrical, maybe you can help somebody with stripping wires or whatever sometime down the line. But learn a little bit about everything and learn just a few skills and everything because it'll help you out.
Yeah, I think that's a point. I totally agree with what you two said. It was articulated a lot of what I was thinking. So, yeah, another thing I would add to that is, just like Cassie was saying, definitely branch out, try new things. That's the way that you accumulate as many of the skills as possible. And it doesn't even have to be really technical. If your leadership and tasks are being delegated, things like that, like try out something new. If you don't usually for us, like we have people running different meetings, especially when we're virtual. We have different leadership members like kind of assigned to each meeting. If you haven't done one, if you're kind of nervous about like speaking to a group, just try it out, because that's how you can get a taste of each skills, kind of gauge what you like, and also learn a lot from it in the process. So I think, yeah, those were really good answers, and I totally agree. Definitely just basically have that willingness to try, learn again, and that's the best way you're going to develop skills.
Okay, great. So a lot of you have leadership positions as captains or technical leads. So what parts of your journey to become or reach this leadership position have shaped you the most?
I'd say being wrong and making a lot of mistakes. I think a lot of people see that the road to captainship is sort of like, oh, you must be like the never wrong epitome of technical knowledge, like just got on there and knew what you were doing kind of person. And I really wish I could go and tell someone, like, you can you have room for error as long as you know to learn from it. Um, I think what gave me the most humility and also confidence in myself was to be able to realize, oh my gosh, like we've put so much work into this or something like that, and I've made a mistake and I think I might have wrecked it all. And then realize, okay, I need to take responsibility for this. I need to fix it. I can ask other people for help in fixing this. Um, but once I'm through with this, I will have learned so much from this failure. And so I think the defining characteristic there is making mistakes on the way. And so if you're someone who, feels like at this point they might not be able to do leadership, or feels like they have to be perfect in order to be worthy of the leadership spots, try to let go of that. Try to forgive yourself, because as long as you have a learning mentality, all of those failures are going to teach you the lessons that are going to make you an amazing leader.
Yeah. Also,
no, go ahead.
Speaking of the learning mentality, I think that's probably one of like the most important things. And I think like for me, it was just because I like the more you get invested, like the more you get interested, and the more you like truly feel like I want to have a leadership position. So it's all about like recognizing the opportunities that are like available to you, and kind of going the extra mile to really like take those opportunities and do extra work and that type of thing. Like as they mentioned, as I think a couple of you guys mentioned before, like kind of doing a little bit of everything. So sort of like get involved with things that aren't traditionally like part of that path. And the more you do that, the more interest you'll get, and then that will just lead you up to like really truly having the passion and the interest to have that leadership position and to do all of the work that comes with it.
Yeah, I mentioned this before, but in previous years, I think I can pick out so many particular instances in my mind where I was asked a question and I didn't answer. I knew the answer, but I didn't answer because I was kind of overthinking in my mind, or I had an idea, but I didn't say it because I wasn't sure of the perfect idea. And it was a good idea. It was a valid idea, and I should have said it. And then I felt like embarrassed after because I had the chance to say that and I didn't do it. So I think that was a really big issue for me, especially the first year. And when I realized that, I was really passionate about this team and I wanted to commit to it, I realized that I had to overcome that, like, no matter what. It was just something I had to do in order to be effective on the leadership team. So I started kind of consciously working on speaking up and saying what I wanted to say, no matter whether I was, apprehensive about the end result. So I think that's really changed me a lot in that I kind of go for it. Like, I don't overthink as much anymore, and it's really a big relief because you don't have to think that much about what you're going to say and whether it's going to be the perfect end result. So I think it's really helped me in being more effective with my communication and putting my ideas out there no matter what. And I've even seen a change in, like, I participate more in school and, like, just in my general life. I'm not afraid to tell people what I'm thinking. So that's probably been the most impactful thing for me, and it's one of the most important things that I've learned through robotics, probably.
Cassie, do you want to answer the question, or should I keep going? Because I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, no, they answered it really well. I didn't have anything to add, actually.
Awesome. Okay, well, we have one last question from the chat. What is the most important piece of advice you have received?
My mentor always tells us, don't apologize. And, that's not to say, like, be a jerk. It just means apologize for being there. You're not taking up space. You don't apologize for, your contribution. Don't be like, oh, sorry, I talked too much or I got too excited. That's not a bad thing. So there's really nothing to be sorry about. And I think a lot of girls need to realize that, you know, just do what you're there to do, and don't be about it because, your contributions are important, and it goes back to that idea of self-worth. So I think getting that advice, especially on a girls' team, is so important because you see girls apologizing so much for things that are not mistakes, So probably one of the most, it's a small piece of advice, but it can be very impactful.
Yeah, one thing that I would say, I think I said it earlier too, is try everything. Because, a lot of times when you see females on a team, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but you'll see them mainly in the business area or up in the stand scouting. And maybe they're there because they know, hey, I like social media. No, I've never, used a drill. No, I've never actually done anything with wires before. But that's because they never got a chance to do it. You don't know. You might end up loving electrical or programming or CAD or whatever. Just that's one thing that our team really likes to, I guess, embody is make sure that everyone tries everything, because you'll never know if you like something without trying it. And you never know, it might end up becoming your job and becoming something that you really love to do every day.
I think
for
one of the Nidhi, do you want to go or should I go?
You could go.
Alright. I think one of my the pieces of advice I've received that stuck the most in my mind is one that our mentor Mr. Leitch gives us pretty much every year, which is I'd rather you ask like a million stupid questions than make one silly mistake on the actual machine or on anything you're doing. And I think it's important not just because it's a safety thing, but also because oftentimes I think there's a lot of this need that you need to ask the smartest questions, and you need to be on top of everything, especially if you're a woman and you're afraid that you only got one shot at representing yourself and that shot has to be perfect. Asking any kind of question is going to help you so much. And sometimes it has to be the really, really basic questions. Like, one of my things that I like telling people is if you don't know what you should be asking, ask about that. So, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I feel like I should know a little more, but I don't know where it is that I'm lacking skills. Because again, you need a little bit of foresight to understand where you have gaps in your knowledge. So maybe ask, okay, when you were my age or when you were at the spot where I am now, what do you wish you had known? What questions do you wish you had asked? Even those base level questions. And then I think that advice was not only important to me because it helps me when I'm in a more junior position and I'm learning from someone else or I'm in a new learning environment, but it also keeps me in check when I'm in like a senior position and I'm teaching other people something. Because, being a woman in leadership isn't just getting to leadership, but it's also being a good leader once you're there. And I think that idea of, the importance of all of those silly questions is just as important when you're teaching, because everyone you're talking to probably has a silly question that they're dying to ask but afraid to ask. And as a leader, it's so important and so impactful to be able to say, hey, do you have any question that you're embarrassed about asking and do you want to talk to me about it? And so being able to be that person that lets people grow to their full potential, even in the face of embarrassment, is something that I've always held close to heart. And I think that advice really embodied for me.
Yeah, I'll just keep it really short because I know that we're running low on time. But mine would just be that don't be afraid to deviate from the norm. Like whether that be me because I'm interested in business and technology, which is not your common robotics like type thing you think about, and also being a girl in a position. Don't be afraid to just deviate and do your own thing and just not follow that norm path.
Great, thank you so much. So thank you to all of our amazing panelists here today who provided some really valuable information. I think I learned a lot today. I hope you learned a lot today. Please make sure to come back tomorrow if you want to see more of our presentations for Capital City Classic. And thank you, everybody, and I hope you do well on your journeys in leadership.